Namaste. So this is Bijeet. So today we are going to have our third lecture. Uh, and so today's topic is okay. So basically, as you know, we have started a lecture series on Indian political theory. And today is our third lecture. The title of today's lecture is Hindu Morality is Natural Morality. Um, and in the last two lecture, we basically discussed that we need to de-Abrahamize our culture and our politics in the sense, and because of the fact that that de-Abrahamization is equivalent to decolonization of India and will be equivalent to decolonization of India. And we have also extensively discussed about Abrahamic historiocentrism and how it leads to various it creates various anomalies, and in the process it actually destroys the whole of culture itself. And so today we are going to continue from there to understand what is actually wrong with this Abrahamic historiocentrism and historiocentrism, so to say, and how basically the Abrahamic morality that is centered around this historiocentrism, how it leads to nihilism or nihilism, so to say, and what we can offer, okay, what the Hindu morality can offer to escape from this nihilism. Okay, so again, this is a very big topic, and probably it will take a couple of lectures. Let's see. I'm not sure, but this is again a very pivotal point that we are going to touch upon, at least in the context of this subject of Indian political theory. Okay, and then we are going to build up from here. So first, we are going to discuss the Rai and Pran to basically create a framework which will be sort of homologous to the principles of nature, because as you know, that as per Hinduism or as per Hindu morality, Prakriti is Parameshwar, right? Prakriti is the temple, it is the mandir. Prakriti is the mandir of Hinduism. So basically, Hindus have learned a lot, and pretty much the whole of spirituality is centered around Prakriti, which is sloppily translated as nature. And so basically, we are going to understand the naturality of Hindu philosophy and various aspect of it, which will be needed to create this Hindu moral framework. And we are going to have a very detailed analysis of how to build upon it, every nitty gritty things in that sort of domain. And from there, we are going to compare it with the Western philosophers and their philosophy itself. Um, and then finally, so probably by the end of today or in the next lecture, we are going to sort of understand dharma and karma and all these things, and how it can be contextualized in the realm of Hindu morality, in the natural morality. We are also going to touch upon very basic ideas, fundamental ideas like spontaneous morality, intentional morality, and obviously natural morality. Okay, so these are the things which we are planning to cover today. Much of this is probably new to you, and it is probably new to the whole of the academia as well, because this part, the lecture, is taken from a book that I am currently writing, which will be published. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe end of year, or it depends on the editor actually. So yeah, it is taken from that book. The name of the book is Split, and yeah. So let's dive into this topic. Hindu morality is natural morality. So, as I promised, the very first topic, in continuation from the last lecture, is that Abrahamic historiocentrism creates nihilism. Right now, you know that the Abrahamism, like Judaism, Christianism, and Islam, their basic claim is that human history is basically the sole source of morality. Right, in their conception of morality, there is a very clear timeline, right, and there is a singularity in the timeline, which is basically it can be birth of their messiahs, or birth of Jesus, or birth of their Rasulullah, right? So there is a singularity in their timeline, and before that episode, that single event, all the events before that specific singular event are basically, they happened in the age of jahiliyat, jahalat, right, in the age of darkness. And after the birth of that Jesus or Rasulullah, it is the age of illumination, right? So they conceive this whole thing, morality, as basically a phenomena that started somewhere down the history. Okay. So basically, their claim that human history is the sole source of morality, it essentially dictates that the temporal fluctuations of events have the power to induce fluctuations in normativity, in the sense that the natural universal morals, they have the capacity by which the society can easily gauge the future and can retrospectively look into the deep past. Okay, so basically they are saying ki, okay, so we have got a book. Use this book to understand the past as well as the future. Now, this is powerful since it enables a society to exactly understand where it is situated at a particular time in the vast infinity of space time, right? Because if you have a book which guides the humanity in terms of morality, etc., then you can, at any point in this space time continuum, no matter where you are in terms of which nation you are in, or what age you are in, whichever year you are in, you can just open the book and you can exactly understand that how a society can work ideally, right? The certainty that natural morals arm a society with saves the society from any schism or abrupt subversion. Now, if there is a moral which is natural moral, it should be like that, right? That it should be universal. It should be applied at all point in space time. It has to be maybe in accordance with the natural functioning, and obviously because it is in accordance with the natural functioning, which means it is in accordance with the very spirit of humanity, right? So these natural morals, they ideally should never create a split or any schism or any sort of abrupt subversion within a human psyche. Now, this precise certainty is missing in Abrahamic design, okay, which we are going to prove, which we have talked about. I mean, we have talked about the historiocentricity, but today, basically, we are going to discuss ki how this certainty is missing. Okay, this certainty about naturality of morality is missing in Abrahamic design. The historical standard it tries to impose on humanity is nothing but an aberration in the natural functioning of the society. This is not to say that oppression or darkness should eternally be the trend of history, and that human morality can never venture to dream of a perfect world of natural universality. But lo and behold, the falsehood of Abrahamic historicity can only keep humanity eternally in the hot cauldron of rage, friction, and bloodbath. Right? So, what does Abrahamism do? It always keep you enraged, right? Ki the world is imperfect and it can all. I mean, it can be perfected if and only if the world runs as per their Ahle Kitab, as per their book from the sky, right? Now that thing always create a rage within a Abrahamic man. Even when Abrahamism emerges victorious, the naturalness of a society ideally should not feel the compulsion to accept the framework behind the victory and its universal and moral framework. So even when Abrahamism is, or Abrahamic sort of legion or Abrahamic army is getting victorious in at some point in history and geography, Now it just says कि they were victorious in a specific battle or war. It does not dictate that they were right. It does not dictate that they were. It does not like by default dictate that they were always on the right side of things. Okay, it just says that they were victorious. Nothing else. Nothing more than that. Right. So it's a statement of their victory. It's not a statement of their claim on universal truth. Every victory of Abrahamism is a political victory, and victory in polity is mostly embedded in a morality of ambiguity. But the imposition of Abrahamic morality as the true morality after each political victory repeatedly diverts humanity away from natural conventions. Okay. Every time they were victorious, they started to impose some political ideology as the natural moral ideology. They tried to impose on the society they conquered, right? Now, Leo Strauss, in his book Natural Right and History, I guess that's the name, right? Yes. And so, in Natural Light and History, Leo Strauss actually described this quite aptly. Quote, all standards suggested by history as such proved to be fundamentally ambiguous and therefore unfit to be considered standards. To the unbiased historian, the historical process revealed itself as the meaningless web spun by what men did, produced, and thought, no more than by unmitigated chance, a tale told by an idiot. The historical standards, the standards thrown up by this meaningless process, could no longer claim to be hallowed by sacred powers behind that process. The only standards that remained were of a purely subjective character, standards that had no other support than the free choice of the individual. No objective criterion allowed henceforth the distinction between good and bad choices. Historicism culminated in nihilism. The attempt to make man absolutely at home in this world ended in man's becoming absolutely homeless. Okay. So basically Abrahamism starts with the tall claim that the stripping history of everything, right, of truth, naturally understood truth, metaphysics, morality, and scientific cogency will make history objective. So basically what they tried to do, once they started to get victory, at least in the political realm, they started to strip. So before these Abrahamic victories, there was like all subjects were essentially very much cogent, correlated, and as if they were one single subject, like history, philosophy, metaphysics. Everything was sort of compiled into a single sort of uh, academic structure, right, or literary structure, so to say. But Abrahamism started to say कि stripping history of मतलब history should be and must be stripped of metaphysics, morality, and scientific cogency, because it will make the history itself very objective. Okay, and that morality can emerge organically out of sequence of historical events. कि जैसे अब्राहमिक हिस्ट्री जैसे कॉन्सीव किया गया उसको उसी तरह से लिखो जैसे हम लोग बेसिकली बता रहे हैं, और वहां से फिर जैसे जिसे सुन्नत कहते हैं, राइट, फ्रॉम दिस हिस्टोरिकल इवेंट्स ऑफ अब्राहमिज्म, ऑफ इस्लाम और क्रिश्चियनिटी, ऑटोमेटिकली जो मोरल फ्रेमवर्क है वो ऑटोमेटिकली वहां से निकलेगा. But the very assumption of Abrahamism dictating history from a position of power desacralizes, desacralizes history and brings history into discordance with objectivity, naturalness, universality, and transcendence. Right? It just distorts the naturality of this thing, which is actually the objective of Abrahamism. Historical norms become a matter of subjective choice. Abrahamic morality emerging out of it becomes synthetic, assembled from curated narratives shaped by power and accident rather than discovered within the structure of reality. This conscious choice that Abrahamism makes to diverge from reality imparts deep effects on its living agents, which are inhuman individuals. So, society, tradition, natural convention, and natural knowledge are themselves living form of memory, right? Um, एक सोसाइटी किस तरह से जीता है, इट लिव्स थ्रू इट्स traditions, its festivals, its natural conventions, its natural knowledge, societal knowledge, right? And obviously through its history, because all these things, may it be festival or natural convention or any other thing, calendar, those all are part of the history of a society. Now, when Abrahamism dismantles these organic continuities, it does not merely subvert history, it annihilates it. What survives in their place is not history, but propaganda, rebranded as Abrahamic historicity. Deprived of ontological grounding, such a society ceases to be a civilizational entity and degenerates into a marketplace. तो अगर वहां से हिस्ट्री, फेस्टिवल, ये सारी चीजों को अगर हटा दो, then what happens is that it ceases to become civilization, and it degenerates into a marketplace, an extractive space where history is subverted, faiths are politicized, and knowledge are borrowed from colonizing ideologies. And the nation is reduced to nothing more than a vast apparatus of consumption and exploitation. Deep down, a man is trapped in this design, and he starts to lose his faith that anything universal whatsoever can actually exist, that truth can actually be explored from the piles of knowledge gathered historically by humanity, that natural convention and natural order are universal and can simultaneously be experienced through deep introspection into his own soul and spirit, and that his Atma is connected to the larger functioning of the universe, and that reality is not synthetic but sacred. Right? So just imagine. So, for example, before the advent of Abrahamism, right, the border were open, knowledge used to be shared without any inhibitions, right? I mean, the faith and devtas, they were diverse. The whole of society was polytheistic, but they were not in clash. There was a space for plurality and mutual interaction, right, through which every society across the geography could evolve together, could trade, could share their history, could develop mutual understanding of each other, and there was a naturalness in the whole of universe, in the whole of world, and the human being dwelling in it. But Abrahamism actually basically cuts it off, and it actually kills the opportunity of any deep introspection, or that the Atma is connected to the larger functioning of the universe, and it actually sort of make us underconfident about the fact that reality can be sacred and not synthetic. Abrahamic historicity and historiocentricity leave the individual suspended in time without metaphysical anchorage. Abrahamic historiocentrism culminates in nihilism, not as a rebellion against Abrahamism, but as its logical conclusion. So when you are actually severed, you are cut off from the reality and its naturalness. Um, when you sort of turn yourself away from the absolute truth, that and the absolute truth of the nature, right? Those set of absolute principle, the Rit, you stop believing in the fact that there can be anything absolute, and in the absence of that belief, you start to think everything as some sort of a narrative, right? When you lose your belief in that ultimate sort of, in at least in the existence of an ultimate truth, or at least in the naturalness of the society, everything start to become narrative to you, and you lose basically the cogency of interpretations, which actually lead to nihilism. Okay, and this nihilism is not that whatever my capacity is, it is not enough. The nature is a much bigger than my capabilities. It is not like, it's not a rebellion against Abrahamism or Abrahamic God, right? It is actually the logical conclusion of Abrahamism. Okay, it is not like, okay, there are bigger power than me, and I'm not big enough. It is not that kind of underconfidence. It is not that kind of quote unquote. It's not that kind of nihilism. It's the nihilism of specific to Abrahamism. It is the logical conclusion of Abrahamism that actually makes you try to make you quote unquote logical, Abrahamic logical at least, and from there it actually throws into it into this abyss of nothingness, where nothing cogent, true, historical can actually exist, nothing organic can actually exist, and it gradually leads to nihilism. Okay, so and this sort of thing is actually aptly described by this guy Hans Wurz von Belsar, the glory of the Lord. Actually, I'm quoting it from a sort of pro-Christian text where they are writing, okay, quote, in a world that no longer has any confidence in itself to affirm the beautiful, the proofs of the truth have lost their cogency. In other words, syllogisms may still dutifully clatter away like rotary presses or computers, which infallibly spew out an exact number of answers by the minute. But the logic of these answers by itself is a is itself a mechanism which no longer captivates anyone, right? Is you basically take the pran out of every process, and suddenly you see everything is nihilistic and meaningless, right? So this is the main problem that actually Abrahamism offers, um, with its focus on historicity, and specifically the Abrahamic historicity, the synthetic historicity, so to say. Okay, so yeah, so basically we have established by now that Abrahamism can lead to nihilism. Okay, so there are a few more things that I wanted to discuss, but I think this is a good introduction to this topic. Okay, no, now the problem is here how to construct a framework to come out of this nihilism, right? So we are going to discuss this here. Um, right. So basically, now how to, is there an escape? That's the question, right? And to answer that, you have to understand that there is probably one chance, right? It has to come out from naturalness. Now, in the absence where everything around you becomes synthetic and you don't know what to resort to in order to understand naturalness, there is one last figment, right? Which is your Atman, which is your Atma, uh, which is even beyond soul, right? Soul. I think we have already discussed that there can soul is basically the reaction, right? It is dual to the external environment, so it is basically reaction to some um, external stimuli. And Nietzsche also says that there can be many souls, right, depending on the stimuli that you are having. But here we are talking about something which is non-dual, which is spontaneous, quote unquote, spirit. Maybe you can call it loosely call it spirit, but Atman has a very specific meaning in the context of Hindu philosophy. So, in the absence of everything, in the absence, I mean, in the absence of naturalness in everything. So, for example, your mind can also be corrupted by the environment, for example, right? Because mind is what? Mind lives in the same physical level as your body and the external environment, right? So obviously, if there are corruption in the environment itself, in the surrounding, chances are there your mind will also be corrupted, right? At least the environment has the capability to corrupt your mind. Now, in a world where everything is corrupted, where everything becomes synthetic, there is at least one thing which is always natural, and that is your non-dual Atman. Okay, so it is non-dual, and the origin from which our mind, our thoughts, our creativity emerge. When all else fails, when all knowledge has been rendered hollow, all values destroyed, and even the mind can no longer see how its agency over the perception of history, tradition, and truth has been seized, the spontaneous urge for creativity becomes the only force with any semblance of power. In a world where every natural conventions bow before the abyss of Abrahamic propaganda, Even the very existence of this non-dual core, namely the Atman, and its capacity to generate moral decisions spontaneously, becomes a very wild and unrestrained rebellious act. When every linear agent, such as reason, tell a rational man that attempting to escape this infinite pit of nothingness is essentially foolish, the Atman engenders a fire. uh, the Atman engenders a fire within us, the fire to create and the fire to expand, drawing us away from this deep metaphysical abyss. It instills in a man living even under the maya of an Abrahamic nihilistic world the ability to create meaning out of shunyata, to dare to dream in a world where life itself starts to lose its inherent worth. This very dare of creativity is a treason in Abrahamic nihilism. Okay. So basically, here I'm trying to propose that when everything else is failing, right? And when Abrahamism is telling you, okay, there is only this sthula sharir, sukshma sharir, karan sharir. Right, exactly. I mean, um, you can already see that I'm deriving from Hindu philosophy. um and here's the problem, right? Because what is nihilism? So nihilism basically, it basically throws you into this infinitely deep abyss where being a rational man, the the only response that you can get from your spirit, right, if you are completely rational, is that ki, yeah, this is insurmountable, I cannot, because this is an infinite abyss. No matter how long I jump, how high I jump, I can never escape this. Um, and that's a rational response, right? But in order to come out of that infinite abyss of nothingness, you have to have some fire, some non-linearity, within you, within your spirit. Okay, the linear response is obviously your rational, your reason. So you need a non-linear response in order to come out of this infinite abyss, to inject meaning into this shunyata. Because if you're rational, if you have reason which is linear, it will always average out to zero, right? So you need something non-linear, and you need something that has the ability to create something out of nothing and to create meaning out of shunyata. Okay. So obviously, here you can see that, okay, there is, um, uh, uh, the point is that this sheer passion of creation, right? This creation has the ability to sort of defy this nothingness. Yeah, this nothingness and this nihilism. When the reason declares it is not possible, it is a void, you will drown in it without a trace, man chooses to reject this self defeating logic that says extinction is the only rational end. Instead, he clings to a fragile, glowing ember that outlasts despair. He chooses not to collapse into convenience, not to decay in pleasure, but to trade dignity for distraction, right? And not to betray the spontaneous summons of his inner callings, right? So basically, yeah, basically here I am gradually trying to develop the framework where I am keeping this passion for creativity. I'm trying to give it some chance, okay, some opportunity to create something out of nothing, okay. And obviously, why we are trying to create, because in a meaningless world it is creation and it is your creativity that brings some meaning, right? The very first order effect of this thing, of your creativity and your passion for creation, very first order impact is that it will create some meaning of your existence. Okay, so I'm just trying that path, nothing radical here. Okay, I'm just stuck in this infinite abyss and I'm trying to be creative, just to and this is basically 0 to 1, right? In modern terms of Peter Thiel, right? He wrote this book 0 to 1, where he says ki, okay, you have to start create something from 0 to 1 that will take you from 0 to 1. So I'm just going from 0 to 1. Okay. And then because I'm trying to create meaning, my next proposition is that the architecture of meaning is necessarily moral. Why? Because meaning does not wait for us behind the veil. It does not descend from the cloud, right? It Morality in this sense, when stuck in this abyss and you are creating, it is coming from within you. It is not descending from heaven. It must be made, and it must be made not through deception, not through lies, not through cunningness. Meaning, to be anything more than delusion repackaged, must rest on something solid as morality. Okay. And because morality, this thing is not a rule book. It is a it is basically an act of rebellion against the very absurdity we are trying to escape, the absurdity of nothingness. Is the commitment to conduct oneself with dignity, even when the cosmos offers no applause, right? It is being spontaneous. I am not doing it to get applause from the outside environment. It just came from my mind that, okay, what is the escape? It is probably creativity, creation, right? And what kind of creation? Has to be moral creation. It is not about being right. Okay, it is about not being small or insignificant. And obviously, this, if meaning, if it is really authentic, it has to grow in this soil. Okay, in your own core, in your own, from your own atman. Not because morality guarantees it, but because without is there is only utility, appetite, manipulation, mimicry, and intention. Without morality, the search for meaning may bring a great risk of awakening without grounding, right? Freedom without form. Meaning requires morality, not as mere prescription, not as some disembodied lawgiver's rule book, but morality as the only reliable fabric on which meaning can be stitched. Okay. And if you think metaphysically, morality has the oldest and the greatest genesis, precisely because of this reason, right? It precedes Devtas even. It precedes any doctrine, an axiom, an experience. It is the rhythm of the universe itself. Morality assists the universe to create meaning out of pure void. Brahmand is so ancient, so vast, so symmetric, so simple, and so beautiful because it is, but it is still not dead yet because it is weaved on moral values, the same values that have ignited the fire of existence in this Brahmand and consequently have given it the greatest of all possible meanings. To act morally in a world where nothing compels us to is the highest creative act. It is the forging of meaning not through belief but through being. Not because the world is real necessarily, but because we are, right? So in a way, I am moral, therefore I exist. Okay, we are the fulcrum on which truth and illusion tilt. It is through our moral conduct that the truth is asserted on the void of Maya. This is our universe, and we should have the right to question everything. It is through this incessant questioning that many gods die their pitiful deaths, while their occasional moral acts remain untouched. So it can happen that a civilization in its dynamical evolution lose one or two devtas, okay, just because they had a specific contextual appearance um, in some event down the history. But if that context is lost, some devtas are invariably lost. It happened to Hindus as well, right? Some devtas are actually transformed to mean something else, but which mean ki many gods die their pitiful deaths because they lose context. but they are occasional moral acts. So from the very moral act, the from which we conceive these devtas, those moral acts remain. They remain as some fundamental fabric of our civilization and our society, right? So while there, the occasional moral acts of those extinct devtas, they remain untouched. Morality is that one gesture that affirm existence without clinging to it. Manas is inert. Self is same as that. A Christian, it is breathed with life. Okay, so we are going to discuss all these things and these distinctions. I mean, maybe we should just from here on we should maybe stop comparing, because they are fundamentally different philosophies. Okay, manas और मन जो है उसके बीच थोड़ा बहुत differences है. Even manas as defined from defined in various like कपिला जैसे डिस्क्राइब किए थे, उसके बाद जैसे डिस्क्राइब मनस का अलग अलग मीनिंग रहा है. इवन कपिल का जो सांख्य है उसका जो इंटरप्रिटेशन निकलता है, उस पे जो टीका लिखा गया है, उस पे भी चीजों को अलग अलग व्याख्या दिया गया है. ठीक है, अम, तो उसको ध्यान में रखते हुए हम लोगों को आगे बढ़ना होगा. Morality is that one gesture that affirms existence without clinging to it. Morality heals a man, especially after he sees the emptiness. And it saves him not by asking him to retreat from the world, but by lighting the eternal fire that brings forms and structures, wills and representations into this otherwise chaotic or illusory existence. Okay. So basically, here I'm trying to establish the proposition that the architecture of meaning is necessarily moral. Okay, because so first we were this poor creature in this infinite abyss. From there, we created meaning, and then we said that this architecture of this meaning has to be moral. The next step is morality assumes an uncompromising path to Bhuma. Okay. So now that we know we are moral creature, we are going to expand. We're going to expand our spirit. Okay, quote unquote spirit. So now, which morality? The morality that expands us, never diminishes. The morality that does not leave us hunched over in our own eyes, but leads us to Bhuma. Bhuma means the ग्रेटर बीइंग. ओके, भूमा जैसे सबसे बड़ा जो आइडिया होता है, मतलब इट इज ग्रेटर देन योर सेल्फ, दैट इज कॉल्ड भूमा. ओके, द ग्रेटनेस, सो टू से, द इटर्नल, द ग्रेटर थिंग्स. What distinguishes the greater choice and interpretation from inferior, cunning, subverted choice in this world, a world so riddled with contradictions, decadence, and shallow claims of truth, quote unquote truth, is not some fleeting moral platitude or intellectual exercise. It is the craving for Bhuma, that which ignites the spirit, propels the individual beyond the mundane and the petty, and reveals the true dignity that resides in the soul. Bhuma makes moral codes honorable and forms the very bedrock of any moral stature and confidence. It is the lifeblood that separates cosmos from the insignificant, the truth from falsehood, and the warrior from coward, the honorable from the enslaved. Right? It is not some so this Bhuma is not some archaic relic of past societies. It is the very primal force that compels a man to pursue not the fool's gold or fleeting pleasures and transient desires, but the highest calling. The Bhuma is the highest calling, the embodiment of the sacred, the infinite, the vast. It is, in fact, how Hindus have decided to define themselves. Hinani dushyati iti Hindu, one who abhors hinta or lowliness is a Hindu. So I'm quoting this from Meru Tantram, Hinani Gunani Dushyati iti Hindu. Meru Tantram, actually, it is a text written maybe near 1000 AD or so, 1000 Common Era. Uh, and there actually Devi Parvati is asking Shiva that who is a Hindu. And then Shiva is responding that hinani gunani dushyati iti hindu, जो हीन गुण को जो घृणा करते हैं, राइट, उससे जो उसके चक्कर में जो नहीं पड़ता है वही हिंदू है. हिनानी गुनानी दुष्यति थी हिंदू, हिनानी दुष्यति थी हिंदू. So one who abhors हीन गुण is a Hindu. Morality escapes the void of nothingness only by turning away from it. जब जो लोलीनेस है उससे जब मुकर के सामने आ जाएंगे, सामने की तरफ देखेंगे, तब हम लोग भूमा को टच करने लगेंगे, तब हम धीरे धीरे हिंदू बनने लगेंगे. मोरालिटी एस्केप्स द वॉइड ऑफ नथिंगनेस. शब्दकल्प ध्रुवा, शब्दकल्प ध्रुवा इज एक्चुअली, it's a dictionary like thing. Okay, it is the what do you call it, thesaurus of this compilation of all the Sanskrit words made by राधाकांत देव. सो यहाँ पे सारे वर्ड के जैसे डेफिनेशन दिया हुआ है, राइट, और इट्स द विकी ऑफ संस्कृत वर्ड्स बेसिकली. और वहां पे जो हिंदुओं का ये डेफिनेशन दिया गया है, हिनानी दुष्यति थी हिंदू, और फिर रेफरेंस में वहां पे मेरु तंत्रम को रखा गया है. ठीक है. शब्दकल्प ध्रुव वाज रिटेन इन आई थिंक 17th 18th or 19th century. Okay, so morality escapes the void of nothingness only by turning away from it, adopting the greater call for Bhuma. Okay, so this like awakening yourself to the call of greatness, right? To the greater call, to the Bhuma. It actually makes you Hindu. Okay, this pursuit of honor sets a man apart from the wretchedness, particularly from the deceitful, the conniving, and the manipulative forces of, for example, the religious values that pervades the society. These values, cloaked in the robes of morality and compassion, reek of hidden agenda, of ulterior motives, and a creeping moralism, if you can call it moralism at all, that aims to subdue the spirit and destroy the dignity of a man. It is only through the quest of Bhuma, that morality distances itself from the Abrahamic tradition, which is built on guilt, on a false sense of salvation, on the promise of eternal life purchased with servitude and subjugation. Because Abrahamism smells of bad air, a toxic cloud of hypocrisy that stifles the will to power and suppresses the soul's true nature. Right, because Abrahamic morality, they are this historiocentric morality built on guilt, built on servitude, कि तुम्हें क्वेश्चन करना मना है, तुम्हें इटर्नल लाइफ और अच्छा खासा जन्नत वाला लाइफ तभी मिलेगा जब तुम बिल्कुल ही कुत्ता बन जाओगे, राइट, नबी का कुत्ता बन जाओगे, कोट अन कोट, या फिर जो बिल्कुल ही सरेंडर कर दोगे, राइट. इस्लाम, द वेरी वर्ड इस्लाम, इट मीन सबमिशन. Similarly, here also in Christianism also, you know that you have to submit to Jesus because Jesus is the only king, right? You have to submit before the Holy Trinity because you are by default ab initio you are a sinner, right? So it is built on guilt, it is built on submission, false sense of salvation. ये सारे हीनता है. These are lowliness promised to a human being. ये जो हीनता है, एक हिंदू इसके खिलाफ खड़ा होता है. A Hindu abhors हीनता because he craves for bhuma. It is the craving for bhuma that makes one a Hindu. ठीक है. So so इसी तरह एक हिंदू इसके खिलाफ खड़ा हो जाता है. Whatever stifles the will to power, whatever suppresses the true nature of a soul. Okay, it is the bhuma that will always prevent a man from bowing to the twisted ideals of Abrahamic religions. A man has honor, and it is the most essential component of his character because it is the honor that takes you to Bhuma. He is not a cowardly slave who seeks to appease a distant god. He is a fierce warrior who knows that his dignity is tied to his will to ascend and to conquer. A man does not seek approval from a tyrant in the heavens. He knows that his dignity comes from his inner mastery, from his relationship with the world, nature, and the cosmos. To degrade oneself, to fall into the muck of inferior, distant, lifeless Niskarma God, is cowardice, and it is not moral at all. It is hinta to surrender one's spirit to forces that deny him the greatness that he is born to achieve. A man is a moral entity who despises this lowliness. In the honor bound Atma of a man lies a sense of superiority, not over the weak, the downtrodden, but over the empty and deceptive promises of subjugation, over the life denying forces that attempt to twist the meaning of existence. Man is not an instrument of surrender, but a creed of ascension. It calls for the mastery of one's own mind, body, and soul, to rise above the degradation that seeks to infect the world, to reach for the Bhuma, the vast, the eternal, the grand. The path of a man is a path of conquest, of victory, not through deceit or trickery, but through the purity of honor. And it is this honor which is this true spiritual force. It is no, it is what elevates a man from the mire of mundanity to the greatness of the devtas themselves. To honor one's duty, to stand by one's principle with unwavering strength, is to transcend the weakness that the Abrahamic religions foster, a weakness born of guilt, of submission, of waiting for the heavens to intervene. Man, in contrast, creates his own heaven in this very world, for he is not bound by the chains of dogma or surrender. He does not wait to be a savior, he becomes his own savior. Abrahamic cults mask their true nature under the veil of kindness and charity, but their true goal is suppression of the self, the eradication of personal honor. They tell us to forsake our earthly dignity, to bow our head, to humble ourselves before a higher power. A moral man must always reject this. For a moral man, for a Hindu, honor means standing tall with pride, even before the higher power, asserting his power and his dignity in a world that demands him to be meek and submissive. To choose the Bhuma is to reject the heavenly lie that promises him eternal life only in exchange for his subjugation. Therefore, the relation of a moral man with Bhuma is far more than a mere physical trait. It is the very definition of his meaningful existence. So now we are slowly awakening Bhuma in us, the sense of honor within us. I mean, obviously, your craving for Bhuma is generating this again first hand, quote unquote, can you call it emotion, first hand craving, which is the honor, right? In this whole void of Maya, in this void of Bhutlok, right? What is Maya? Maya is something that changes, right? So anything that is there in Bhutlok that are bound to change are part of Maya. So anything which is born in this Bhutlok, such as your cell, for example, all the cells in your body, they are Maya. Something which is born, maybe your affection for something, your greed for something, that is born at some specific point in space time, right? So because it is born in this bhutlok, in the physicality of this bhutlok, it will die in some time. It will cease to exist. And obviously, because it is born, it is subjected to change with time. That's why these are all Maya. These are part of Bhutlo. But then there are some principles, something which are not touched by this Maya, which are transcended, which are beyond the grip, the scope of the Bhutlok. Okay, those are actually those eternal principles, the Rit, truth. Okay, those are actually Rit. Those are Satya. Okay, Satya is something which doesn't change with time. Okay, so यहाँ से फिर you can see that how we are framing the whole Hindu philosophy from this very um, basic sort of sense of bhuma, sense of honor. We can build up the whole Hindu philosophy from the scratch. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. I can go even in more detail um, to even cover the edge case scenarios, but my book will be published in a few months, and you can check how I have covered the edge case scenarios. Okay, and this is the basic structure that I'm trying to obviously borrow from the Hindu philosophy and incorporate in my work. in this lecture at least, right? हाँ, कुछ कमेंट वमेंट आया था, मैं थोड़ा पानी पी लेता हूँ. एक दो कमेंट है तो दिखा सकते हो. Then I will cover something else. So just maybe for 1 minute I can check the comments. Rudra, you are there? I'm just going to drink some water and then I'll resume. Rudra? So there is no Rudra. So I'm talking to void. I don't know. But hopefully I'm talking with some honor. So this is going somewhere, right? This is creating some meaning. Okay. Um, Now you may say, yeah, Bijit, what you're saying is basically it's synthetic, right? In the sense that okay, maybe you are synthesizing these sort of framework, they are not natural. But you promised us कि यार uh, whatever morality you are going to conceive or you are going to prescribe or describe, it will be natural morality, right? So what is the proof? What you're saying is actually natural part of natural morality. So in order to explain that, I am going to introduce one more word, which is Rai. Okay, Rai is a word which is there in many Upanishads. I remember, I think it is in Taittiriya Upanishad, in Prashna Upanishad. So at least in a couple of Upanishad, you will get this word Rai. तो probably रई is the word जहां से आर्य निकला है, probably. Okay. Now what is रई? uh, अब जब हम लोग भूमा को डिस्क्राइब करेंगे, जब एक्सपेंशन को डिस्क्राइब करेंगे, राइट? Because okay, we have honored that, that's why we are expanding to Bhuma, right? At least through our Kirti and everything, right? रई इज दैट. सो इनफैक्ट प्रश्नोपनिषद या फिर यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन किया जा रहा है व्हाट इज रई कंटिन्यूअसली. समवन इज सेइंग कि फूड इज रई, समवन इज सेइंग वाटर इज रई, right? And they are true in some or the other context. In some specific context it is true, because if you get food, it is the food and so someone say प्राण is रही, मतलब जो सांस हम लोग ले रहे हैं वो रही है. So partly they are all true, because it is your, your sauce and your food which is actually expanding your body, right? एक बच्चे से जब एक बड़ा होते हो, वो रही के लिए होते हो, राइट? वो भी एक्सपैंड करते हो, तुम्हारा बॉडी जो एक्सपैंड करते हो उसके पीछे जो 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 सॉर्ट ऑफ प्रिंसिपल रहता है वो भी रही है एक हिसाब से. उसी हिसाब से तुम्हारा जब माइंड एक्सपैंड होता है वो भी एक रही का ही एक एक्सप्रेशन है. ओके, इन द भाव लोक, सो टू से. Okay, so essentially, Rai is the fire that exponentiates to Bhuma by burning its own ashes. Okay, so for example, when you check, when we talk about causality, for example, causality का जो एक chain होता है, right? It's like a um how to say it? It's like a tree that is always branching out, and it is branching out too fast, right? कि एक जगह से निकला था, फिर कॉजलिटी is what is it is the principle that creating from cause to flurry of effects, and these effects themselves are becoming cause to some more effects and so on. So it is just branching out of events, of causes, right? From some cause you are getting a flurry of effects branching out. So that's sort of an exponential expansion, right, of the branching out of some physicality. Okay, so now so at least at the level of causality you can see कि cause से जो effect बनता है वहां पे ये बंद नहीं हो जाता, it doesn't ceases, right? It doesn't cease, it basically, so that effect itself become the cause to something new. So in a way, philosophically, it's like okay, it is so the cause is having some fire within it, to create ashes, which are the effects, and these effects are actually the ashes are actually bonding themselves to create more effects, right? More second order effects, so to say. So it is the fire within causality that exponentiates by burning its own ashes. So Rai is that fire that exponentiates to Bhuma by burning its own ashes. Now, at the level of causality, when I'm saying this is a description of the dual world, right? Because you know that physical world is a dual world, right? But Rai is something beyond that. I mean, this is a very generic principle, which is probably which can be applied beyond this bhutlok, so to say. And what is the proof? So the emergence of the Brahman from an absolute void could not have been facilitated by any linear, uniform, or inertial process. Am I audible, guys? Because I saw some issue. Uh, so I guess I'm audible, right? I don't know. Can someone confirm? Just write it in the chat so that I can see. Okay, okay. So right. So Rai is the fire that exponentiates to Bhuma by burning its own ashes. The emergence of Brahmand from an absolute void could not have been facilitated by any linear, uniform, or inertial process. Any such mechanism would have led to an immediate collapse of the emergent structure back into the same null state, the nothingness. Right. So if the world were created with linear, uniform processes, so uh, for any linear process, you know and if it is created out of zero, let's say, if you average it out, it will always average out to zero, right? So you require a non-linear process, which will not a non-linear process which can create this Brahmand out of nothingness. Because if it is not non-linear, if it is linear, then it will always go back to the void, to the nothingness, from which it had momentarily escaped. To persist, expand, and self-organize, the universe had to adopt a principle of exponentiation, a mechanism by which the transformation of states accelerates with each interaction. Just like one cause create a flurry of effect, those each effect become cause to some other set of effects and so on, right? It's an exponential expansion. The world also so this is called inflation actually, if you read physics, if you know some amount of physics. So it is a mechanism by which the transformation of states accelerates with each interaction, each effect generating not equilibrium, but further disequilibrium, not rest, but additional momentum. This process is not just mathematically coherent with the structure of cosmological expansion, but it is philosophically mandated by the observable architecture of causality, right? As we have discussed already. Contrary to the rationalist assumption that reason, logic, or teleology are the primary forces that have ensured the continuity of the cosmos, it is, in fact, the intrinsic fire, the almost irrational compulsion of cause to crave for Bhuma and to beget a flurry of effects that has structurally secured the ontological space within which the physicality of universe unfolds. This tells us something evidently important. Rationalists' refuge, such as reason, logic, or teleology, is linear and canonical, while the fire that blasted cosmos into existence from nothingness is extremely nonlinear. Furthermore, the sustenance and survival of a thriving, expanding cosmos ensure that causality is an exponentiating web of fractal of flame branching outward with ever increasing intensity, far surpassing what existed near the genesis. Right? It's an extremely non-linear process that is actually, so it created from nothingness, but then it is going away from the nothingness through non-linear expansion, right? So obviously this is neither inertial nor mild in its progression. Rather, it functions more akin to a recursive ignition. Right? It is burning its own ashes. Right? There is no residual ashes कि जिससे stasis आ रहा है. ये एक्चुअली अपने ऐश को भी बर्न कर रहा है टू गो अवे फ्रॉम दैट इनिशियल नथिंग वाला स्टेट. ठीक है. It is a non-linear self-augmenting sequence that does not culminate in dissipation. Okay. But instead, it generates further potential for combustion, insight, and volition within the object. If there is ever a set of quote unquote will that give birth to effects and phenomena from a set of cause, the fire of will does not expire, right? It intensifies, produces within the subject a recursive interiority that further amplifies its drive, cognition, and creative projection onto the world. So this is some sort of a chain reaction, as you can see. This is a metaphysical chain reaction. It maps a trajectory for each individual state from a state of ontological nullity to the plenitude of all possible destinies. The absence of ash in the moral and cognitive sense indicates that causality functions not as a terminus, but as a principle of sustained acceleration. I'm just repeating the same thing, right? Meaning, in this framework is not a stable product or final realization. Meaning does not arise through reason alone. It is the essence of an ever intensifying cosmic combustion that fuels without exhaustion or creation of any residual ashes. The subject's existential navigation through and beyond this contingent world. Right? So basically, I'm saying that meaning is not some teleological realization, okay? It is there in the framework itself. It is through this chain reaction that a subject moves from absolute insignificance, which is metaphysical nothingness, to the possibility of every imaginable and unimaginable destiny. The fire does not die. It cannot die because the very condition of its burning is the generation of further flammability. It creates not finality but proliferation, not silence but resonance and infinite becoming. So let us name this fire that sustains and exponentiates the combustion of reality by burning its own ashes. Let's name it Rai. Okay. So this fire that is burning its own ashes to lead this exponential expansion, we are calling it Rai. Right. And as we have established here, it is true at the metaphysical level as well. So Rai is the conceptual architecture and the groundless ground upon which the meaning can emerge out of void. And more importantly, it can sustain itself without collapsing into nihilism because it is a non-linear process. It is an exponential process that is taking itself away from that nothingness, that void. It is Rai that permits the subject to endure the abyss, to metabolize the absurd, and to construct significance not in defiance of meaninglessness, but quite weirdly in the intensification. Rai functions precisely because it never produces ashes as such. This is the structure of a particular kind of cosmic necessity, a necessity that affirms not merely existence but persistence, self overcoming, and meaning generation. It is due to Rai that the universe did not return to void. This is how the subject does not sink into nihilism. This is how meaning does not end in entropy. ठीक है. So basically, यहाँ पे we are conceiving something as Rai, which is taking us away from that, which is actually leading us to Bhuma, right? To the greatness, to the event, to even bigger realization than what we are currently, right? It is taking us away from the void, and this fire that is doing it. The can call it principle, but it is really the fire that is taking it, right? Which is called Rai. Okay. Now, I have developed a few more things here because I wanted to sort of compare it to the Western philosophy कि Western philosophy में कहीं पे ये चीज दिखता है क्या हमें. But frankly, what I found was that कि जो Western philosophy है, because it is based on logic and reason, right? That's why it is canonical in the sense that it is linear. Okay, and I'm going to prove that. Okay, I'm going to prove that now. um, उससे पहले मैं और एक चीज बता देता हूँ. सो यहाँ पे बिकॉज सब कुछ तो पढ़ नहीं रहा हूँ यहाँ पे. सो आई नीड टू एक्सप्लिसिटली से दिस हियर विच इज दैट कि सो जैसे हमारा जो गुण गुण वाला सिस्टम है कि जो तीन गुण होता है, एक सत्व, एक रजस, एक तमस, राइट. सो सत्व एंड रजस, रजस वाला जो पार्ट है वो शायद इट इज होमोलोगस टू रही. सत्व जो है इट इज बेसिकली द प्रिंसिपल, राइट. तमस जो है, तमस इज समथिंग दैट ब्रिंग्स द दिस स्टैसिस इन द सेंस दैट सो बेसिकली मैंने क्या बोला, ये रई का क्या काम है, रई का काम है इट एक्सपैंड्स एक्सपोनेंशियली, राइट. इट एक्सपैंड्स द होल चेन, राइट, ऑफ मीनिंग एक्सपोनेंशियली, राइट. स्टैसिस क्या करता है और तमस क्या करता है? तमस एक्चुअली ये जो एक्सपोनेंशियलिटी है इसको थोड़ा थाम लेता है, मतलब इसको इसको जकड़ लेता है. ये जो रेट ऑफ एक्सपेंशन है उसको जो जकड़ लेता है, जिस जो बेसिकली इनर्शियल आता है ये पूरे फ्रेमवर्क में, दैट इज द तमस. ओके. तो एक बॉडी के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में अगर मान लो कि फॉर एग्जांपल व्हेन आई एम गेटिंग टू फैट, ओके, वहां पे फिर क्या होता है? इट इज स्टैसिस, राइट. इट हैज नो फंक्शनिंग. बट इससे क्या होता है, अगर मैं बहुत मोटा हो रहा हूँ तो उसके लिए मेरा जो हार्ट है वो पंप करने में उसको ज्यादा दिक्कत हो रहा है. ठीक है. सो बेसिकली इट इज सम काइंड ऑफ, सो ये जो स्टैसिस है इट इज द एजेंट ऑफ डेथ. डेथ, आई थिंक आई विल डिस्कस अबाउट इट. इट्स नॉट अ, आई एम सेइंग कि दिस इज नॉट एन इवेंट बट इट्स अ प्रोसेस. बिकॉज जितना इनर्टनेस बढ़ता जाता है उतना एक इंसान डेड होता जाता है. ठीक है. एंड आई विल एक्सप्लेन इट इन अ व्हाइल. नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज कि मॉडर्न जो अपना वेस्टर्न फिलोसफी है, फॉरगेट अबाउट क्रिश्चियनिज्म, वो तो बेसिकली उसके अंदर ज्यादा कुछ है भी नहीं. बट इवन इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ मॉडर्न वेस्टर्न फिलोसफी, मतलब कैन वी सी दीज सॉर्ट ऑफ थिंग्स, राइट, वेयर दे आर ट्राइंग टू क्रिएट मीनिंग आउट ऑफ नथिंगनेस एंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स, राइट. नाउ द प्रॉब्लम हियर इज कि modern Western philosophy it tried to axiomatize a man's interaction with the environment through algebraic statements, which gradually mirrored the geometry suggested by कठोपनिषद. सो कठोपनिषद वाला जो आपको अगर पता है, कठोपनिषद में क्या था, एक बहुत सुंदर उपनिषद है. वो तो सबको, हर एक बच्चे को पढ़ाना चाहिए क्योंकि छोटा उपनिषद है और बहुत डीप. मतलब जिस हिसाब से हम लोग हिंदुइज्म में आत्मा, मृत्यु इसको समझते हैं, वो कठोपनिषद से लगभग डिराइव किया गया है. कठोपनिषद का एक न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे वाला जो एक श्लोका है, न जायते न म्रियते वा समथिंग एंड देन न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. सो दिस इज एक्चुअली यू कैन सी दिस इज कॉपीड इन गीता. ठीक है. तो प्रश्नोपनिषद का ये जो श्लोका है डायरेक्टली ये गीता में लिया गया है सेकेंड चैप्टर में. तो कठोपनिषद में क्या होता है, नचिकेता नाम का एक बच्चा रहता है और फिर उसका पापा को वो तंग करता रहता है कि कुछ तो होता है कि कहाँ जाऊं पापा, ऐसे कुछ रैंडम क्वेश्चन करता है, तंग करता है. तो पापा बोलता है कि जौमेर का जा, जम के पास जा, यम के पास. ठीक है. तो वो फिर पहुंच जाता है यम के पास. हाँ, फिर यम देख रहा है ये बच्चा तो मेरे हिसाब के इसमें है नहीं, मेरे नोटबुक में. ठीक है. तो उसको फिर बोलता है कि उसको ज्यादा ध्यान नहीं देता यमराज. ठीक है. और फिर भी वो रह जाता है उधर. यमराज सोच रहा था कि ठीक है कुछ तो बाग आ गया है, ये तो फिर लौट के चला जाएगा पृथ्वी लोक में. क्योंकि इसका तो मरने का टाइम नहीं है, मुझे मतलब मेरे किताब में तो लिखा नहीं है अभी भी. लेकिन वो रह जाते हैं, 3 दिन रहता है, जिसमें यम 3 दिन बाद आते हैं तो देखते हैं कि यार ये तो बिना खाए पिए ये ब्राह्मण का बेटा यहाँ पड़ा हुआ है. तो यम सोचता है यार मुझे तो फिर पाप लगेगा. तो फिर आई थिंक यम उसे खाना वाना खिलाते हैं और फिर पूछते हैं कि यार मैंने तो आपको 3 दिन तो भूखा रखा है, तो इसके लिए मुझे पाप लगेगा, तो आप बताओ कि मैं, आप मुझे 3 वर मांगो. ठीक है. मैं आपको वरदान दूंगा. तो फिर नचिकेता एक आई थिंक पूछता है कि मेरा पापा अगर कुछ पश्चाताप कर रहे हैं तो उसको आप क्षमा कर दो। दूसरा होता है कि नचिकेता पूछ लेता है ये जो यज्ञ का अग्नि है उसे नचिकेताग्नि शायद नाम दिया जाए, ऐसा कुछ। आई थिंक सेकंड होता है उसका। थर्ड होता है कि टेल मी अबाउट डेथ, ठीक है, मुझे मृत्यु के बारे में बताइए। तो फिर बाकी पहला दो तो ऐसा मतलब दे देते हैं वरदान। इज नॉट फॉर कॉमन पब्लिक, लेट इट बी केप्ट असाइड, नीति हम लोग उतना ही बेहतर है। नहीं नहीं, मतलब ये तो कहानियां हैं यार, ये तो बोल ही सकते हैं। तो फिर यम पूछता है कि नहीं, डेथ के बारे में कैसे बताऊं तुम्हें, ये तो एक मतलब रहस्य है, ये हम लोग बताते नहीं है, देवता जो है वो इंसान को बताते नहीं है। फिर बोलते हैं मैं तो फिर यम बोलता है कि तुम एक काम करो, तुम्हें मैं बड़ा साम्राज्य देता हूँ, तुम्हें इतने सारे कैटल्स मिलेगा, तुम्हें हूर परियां मिलेगी, ठीक है, मतलब तुम्हें अप्सराएं मिलेगी। फिर ये बच्चा बोलता है कि ये सब अगेन ये सब तो पेरिशेबल है, राइट, ये तो कोई ना कोई टाइम में ये तो खत्म हो जाएगा। तो मुझे ये जान के क्या फायदा है, मैं ये वो चीज जानना चाहता हूँ जो इटर्नल है, राइट। तो फिर यम जो बोलता है, यम फिर नचिकेता को जो आंसर देता है वो बेसिकली कठोपनिषद है, राइट। कि कठोपनिषद इमेजिन इमेजिन अ मैन इंटरेक्टिंग विथ हिज एनवायरमेंट लाइक अ राइडर ड्राइविंग द चैरियट, कि एक रथ है उसमें एक रथी बैठा हुआ है। द सेल्फ, द आत्मन is the rider or the rathi. The sarir is the chariot. The intellect or buddhi is the charioteer. And the mind or manas uh, in this context is the reins. The senses or indriya are the horses. And their objects their objects the roads, विषय जो कहते हैं जिसमें हम लोग लिप्त होते हैं, वो बेसिकली वो रोड, वो रास्ता है, वो जो रथ का जो रास्ता है वो विषय है। Only the wise charioteer holding the reins firmly can guide the steeds toward the supreme destination, Parampadam, right, which is beyond birth and death. Without Vigyan or knowledge and mental discipline, the senses behave like wild horses, and with mastery, they become like noble steeds. Now, यहाँ पे आप देखोगे ये जो इस तरह से कठोपनिषद में जैसे इसको बताया गया है, यहाँ पे यू यू हैव कॉन्शियस एजेंट्स, राइट, यू हैव द रथी। बट जो मॉडर्न वेस्टर्न फिलोसफी है वहाँ पे इट ट्राइड टू एक्ज्यूमेटाइज मैन्स इंटरेक्शन विद द एनवायरनमेंट थ्रू एल्जेब्रिक स्टेटमेंट्स, ठीक है। वहाँ पे कोई कोई कॉन्शियसनेस का जगह नहीं है जैसे, ठीक है, विच ग्रेजुअली मिरर्ड द जियोमेट्री सजेस्टेड बाय कठोपनिषद। मतलब इट ट्राई टू सॉर्ट ऑफ एक्सियोमेट। सो अगर कठोपनिषद आपको एक जियोमेट्री दे रहा है कि कैसा दिखता है, देन मॉडर्न वेस्टर्न फिलोसफी ट्राइज टू एक्सियोमेटाइज इट। द लैक ऑफ मोरालिटी सीरियसली हर्टिंग अस इन दैट आंसर कमेंट। अच्छा अच्छा। तो बेसिकली वही है कि कठोपनिषद अगर जियोमेट्री है, देन मॉडर्न वेस्टर्न फिलोसफी ट्राइड टू algebraize it, algebraize that geometry, ठीक है। तो now we know for a fact that Western philosophers were deeply influenced by Vedanta, but whether they attempted to directly formulate equations reflecting Vedantic geometry of man, or whether their honest, sincere, independent efforts led to these equivalences, it is not entirely known. So I cannot tell you for sure कि ये जो इन्होंने एक इक्विवेलेंस लाने की कोशिश किया वो वेदांत पढ़ने के बाद था या फिर दिस वाज अ कोइंसिडेंस। फर्स्ट केम प्लेटो, who asserted that reality lies in the world of forms। ये तो हम ऑलरेडी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं कि there is some transcendental form, right, a table has a tableness, a chair has a chairness। जब उसके साथ कुछ हद तक मैच करता है वो ट्रांसेंडेंटल फॉर्म के साथ, तो उसको उसका वो नाम मिलता है, राइट। सो दिस इज द आइडिया ऑफ ट्रांसेंडेंटल एक्सटर्नल फॉर्म जो which exist independently, right, of these earthly objects। It took several centuries for Europe to produce another sensible philosopher like Immanuel Kant, who argued that we can never access the thing in itself, only its appearances, right? So only we can only access the phenomena and not the thing in itself. Because obviously, whatever we try to see and interpret or access, it is always subjective, right? Because we are the subjects. Descartes separated cogitas, thinking substance, from res extensa, which is extended substance, as if the charioteer could be defined apart from the chariot. कि जो थिंकिंग सब्सटेंस है और जो एक्सटेंडेड सब्सटेंस है, दे आर बेसिकली दे हैव अ वेल बिटवीन देम. तो जो नोमेना है, जो फिनोमेना है, उनके बीच एक वो चीज एग्जिस्ट करता है, वेल एग्जिस्ट करता है, एंड दे आर नॉट डायरेक्टली कनेक्टेड. ओके, आई मीन फिनोमेना के ऊपर जैसे नोमेना का कोई ऐसे कमांड नहीं होता है, as if the charioteer is could be defined apart from the chariot. Yet in doing so, he left the reins unaccounted for. What exactly connect the pure thinking substance to this physical machine, namely the body? For him, the answer was mechanistic. The pineal gland is a hinge between the worlds. कि हम लोग जो चीजों को देखते हैं, जैसे बाहर की दुनिया को रजिस्टर करते हैं, it happens to this connectivity with the pineal gland. But can a hinge explain motion toward a goal? Can it account for what the chariot moves at all? Hume dissolved the self into a bundle of perceptions, reducing the chariot to a series of jolts within, without a driver, reins or destination. ठीक है, ह्यूम तो एक्सट्रीम सॉर्ट ऑफ सब्जेक्टिविटी लाते हैं इस पूरे फ्रेमवर्क में. And if we try to make an equivalence with Kathopanishad, this is the image of an unyoked horses, each sense running towards its own object. That is the vikara of रूप रस शब्द स्पर्श गंध. ठीक है, कि ये जो अलग अलग विकार होता है, ये जो परसेप्शन होता है, वो हमारे जो सेंसेस वो अलग अलग जगह बिल्कुल ही पागलों की तरह भाग रहे हैं. दैट इज बेसिकली, इफ वी ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड ह्यूम फ्रॉम द कठोपनिषद्स पर्सपेक्टिव, ह्यूम manage to unleash these horses, tearing apart the wholeness of the chariot. कि ये चैरियट सच एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता, सब अपने अपने हैं. ठीक है. To preserve the road, he lost the map. He dared to derive meaning without intellect, artha without buddhi, and in the process, he lost vijnana to hold the reins taut. Schopenhauer, he recognized this gap and inserted the will as the hidden engine behind phenomena, the invisible master whose restlessness fuels both inner and outer. His work, The World as Will and Representation, comes remarkably close to this Vedantic image. Will as the master seated in the chariot, representation as the visible apparatus of reins and steeds, like the manas and indriyas. Yet his will is blind, possessing an irrational striving without innate sattva. For example, the sense of bhuma, it is missing, right? But Kathopanishad sees in the master not blindness, but the potential for clarity, for suchi, when the intellect is truly awake. Satra. So Satra sharpened this into existential form. Existence precedes essence. There is no pre-given essence. In a way, the charioteer and the chariot de facto exist. The charioteer discovers the road and the destination only through the act of driving. The chariot is always already in a motion, essence trailing behind existence like a cart behind a horse. For Satra, as for Vedanta, there is no resting in mere perception. Perception ignites intention, and intention demands action. A chain of causality moving inward and upward toward the unmanifest. But Satra asserted that there is no being behind appearance. He claimed that appearance is the true reality, stands radically different from, and in fact diametrically opposed to, the position of Plato and Kant, who believed that reality is not merely the allegory of the cave or solely the phenomena. Heidegger, on the other hand, ventured beyond the ontological might of a canonical Abrahamic God to assume Dasein, much like Atman, in the sense that Dasein is an entity, or I think Dasein bolte hain ye. Dasein is an entity which does not just occur among other entities, rather it is ontically distinguished by the fact that in its very being, capital B, the being is an issue for it. That is, Dasein or Dasein is uniquely capable of reflecting on the existence itself, unlike other beings like stones or plants. ठीक है, चेतना की बात कर रहा है. Heidegger found his own equivalence of nirvana while capital being reveals itself. कि ये जब पता चलता है कि हमारे पास चेतना है, दैट इज लाइक वहां से निर्वाणा चालू होता है. ही कॉल इट लिचटांग. ओके, लिचटांग आई गेस, एन ओपन स्पेस where light can shine through, enabling beings or small beings with a small b, okay, enabling beings to be seen. He almost mimics the idea of Upanishads, which identify Atman with Brahman. And notice the similarity from his quotation. Quote, the clearing is the open region for everything that becomes present and absent. But the clearing itself is not nothing. The clearing is the lighting. Only this lighting grants and guarantees to us humans a passage to those beings that we ourselves are not, and access to the being that we ourselves are. Okay, so basically, this is like उपनिषद में एक जगह बोला जाता है ना कि एक सूरज है, फिर वहां से, लेकिन इफ यू हैव द लोटस पॉन्ड वहां पे, या फिर इफ यू हैव ड्यू, राइट, अगर ग्रास के ऊपर ड्यू रहता है तो अलग अलग जगह सेम सूरज है, रिफ्लेक्ट करता है, और हर एक ड्यू जैसे बिहेव करता है एज सम सोर्स ऑफ सनलाइट, राइट. दैट इज बिटवीन द ब्रह्मन एंड आत्मन. तो सिमिलर चीजें यहाँ पे हाइडेगर एक्चुअली लाने की कोशिश करता है. Heidegger's design brings the road itself into view, not as a surface or inert phenomena, but as a clearing when capital being happens. This is no static stage, it is a terrain that demands navigation, like the Durgam Pathas of Kathopanishad, sharp as a razor's edge. In his later thought, when Heidegger speak of aletheia or unconcealing, one hears the same tension of rishis knew about avatar. That disclosure is not a one-time event, but a constant steering, an active restraint of the senses, so that chariot doesn't veer into mere distraction. ये भगवान जो बार बार अवतार भेजते हैं, इट इज लाइक द अन concealing or revealing of this capital being, okay, which is basically Brahma. ठीक है. Now, the evolution from the pagan philosophers like Plato to modern European philosophers like Heidegger may seem complete in the sense of explaining everything that is theontology and even beyond. So it's basically a closed structure of pretty much inspired by theology. But the core issue still persists. The prawn present in this universal structure, enjoying freedom, experiencing phenomena, still maintaining its independence somehow from the physical chain of causality. Western philosophy का problem ये है, it binds the pran, okay, into this dual physical world, which engages in this duality of physicality, okay, जहाँ पे कॉज है, इफेक्ट है, एंड दे आर बाउंड बाय अ चेन विच इज द कॉजल चेन. इस पे जैसे प्राण को ये बांध देते हैं, तो फिर जो जो अंदर का अपना जो प्राण है या फिर आत्मन है, इनके हिसाब से वो सोल बन जाता है, और जब सोल बन जाता है फिर वो उसमें डुअलिटी आ जाता है. द वेस्टर्न फिलोसफी कैन नॉट टेक यू बियॉन्ड this dualism, beyond this Dvaita existence. Okay. Now, the pran is present in this universal structure, enjoying freedom, experiencing phenomena, and still maintaining its independence somehow from the physical chain of causality, is what makes the universe a poetic, dynamic reality, right? And this living, dynamic reality cannot be grasped through the algebraic axiomatization of philosophy. क्यों? क्योंकि जब तुम एक्सियोमेटाइज करने लगते हो चीजों को, तो obviously corresponding to your set of axioms, there can exist a sort of complementary reciprocal set of axioms which can create another world. Because if you try to create a world from this axiomatic sort of set, it inevitably lead to duality, right? So life is not a set of axioms, but it is a living, breathing reality. It is a dynamic reality, which is beyond this algebraic axiomatization of philosophy. Forget metaphysical reality, even physical reality, which humanity has attempted to axiomatize through formal logical structure, has faced a shameful defeat. मतलब इवन ये मैथ में भी पॉसिबल नहीं है मैथ में भी it has been discovered, it has been proven by mathematician like Gödel that mathematics cannot be simultaneously complete and consistent, um, in the sense that it is a in the sense that it has a finite set of axioms and rules and all these things. Okay. So again, you can read about Gödel's incompleteness theorem. It will be a digression, but again, I've covered it in my book. But I'm just moving on. Okay. So obviously, basically, we are saying ki, okay, we have a living dynamic reality, and the Western tendency of Western philosophy, it cannot explain this life, this dynamism of the universe, because they focus on axiomatization, algebraic axiomatization of philosophy, and it is never possible through in this way to get a complete philosophy of life, so to say. Okay, right. Now let's ask a few relevant questions here, which will take us from Western to Eastern philosophy. So, first question: is humanity really nihilistic? Are we nihilistic? Are you nihilistic? The answer is no. We know it, right? We know it as pratyaksha, as our direct experience. Nihilism does not belong to this ontological constitution of a man. It is not intrinsic to human nature. The existence of a man affirms itself through the immanent primordial fire, which we are calling Rai in our context. It is Rai that, even in the extremity of self annihilation, guides a man to act under the compulsion to ascribe meaning, to reassert some form of significance, and that gesture can never be considered as metaphysically void. This intrinsic fire within oneself has never been adequately accounted for within the horizon of eschatological myth, or the perspective or the prescriptive fiat of an extrinsic transcendental deity, which is the Abrahamic God. This very depth of a man surpasses the theological closure of the Abrahamic God. The severance between Rai, which is the vital sap of being, and the phenomenology of emptiness, as found in Abrahamism and in much of modern literature, is an artificial, ideologically engineered rift, and it is precisely this schism, this cultivated alienation from the immediacy of life's self grounding, that constitutes Abrahamism's most stable and enduring imposition upon the human spirit. Humanity has always managed to escape this imposition and this schism, and this escape can be understood, formalized, and manifested only through Pran and Rai. It is due to this non-dual transcendental chemistry of this duo of Pran and Rai that has helped human to beat this frustrating status quo of eternal meaninglessness, and has instilled confidence in him to create so much. It is only through his fire of life, his spirit to struggle and survive, and then create meaning out of it, in his spontaneous outward expressiveness, and affirmation of his confidence to come out of that cold, sad, depressing pit, to not look back and rationalize his future based upon what he has been gifted with. It is that Rai within him that forces him to look beyond, to overcome, to build up, to discover, to fight, to keep swimming no matter what. It is this spontaneity, the fire, the Rai of human expressions, and not the intention that has lifted humanity from the dark pit of nihilism. And it will continue to do so in the same way for eternity. Right? No rationality, no intention has helped to lift humanity from this dark pit of nihilism. It is that spontaneous fire within a man that he doesn't even have to think about. It is that spontaneity, that fire that has lifted up. It is that Rai that has lifted up a man from this infinite pit of nothingness and nihilism, right? And it will continue to do so in the same way for eternity, because Rahi itself is eternal. Okay. And then also, I'm not going to discuss the death and instinct. Instinct is a very important case, because in my analysis, I am trying to show that instinct is basically, it leads to this temporal singularity, right? So death and instinct are two sort of cases which actually says that there can be something beyond this dual physical world, which has a space time, right? लोगों को शायद समझ में आना ये मुश्किल होता है कि स्पेस टाइम के बियॉन्ड भी एक मेटाफिजिकल एग्जिस्टेंस हो सकता है. So without going to physics, here I am trying to show कि instinct is a proof कि there can be a temporal singularity, जहाँ पे वो मतलब नेसेसरली एक नेटवर्क नहीं रहता कि T1 T2 की ओके देर इज अ रिस्पॉन्स, और आई एम थिंकिंग समथिंग एंड देन आई एम एक्टिंग, उसके बीच वो टेम्पोरल गैप नहीं रहता. दिस इज टू शो कि इंस्टिंक्ट इज द प्रूफ कि as a result, time for the instinct driven animal is perceived only in the now. So जिस मोमेंट पे इंस्टिंक्ट आता है, उस मोमेंट पे जैसे जो टेम्पोरल सेंस है विद इन एन एजेंट वो गायब हो जाता है. ठीक है. सो इट इज एसिम्प्टोटिकली वी कैन से कि basically instinct in its most elemental form immerses us in the now, and reason helps us to weave integrate. तो रीजन में क्या होता है, रीजन में एक टेम्पोरल सेंस होता है, इंस्टिंक्ट में वो जैसे गायब हो जाता है. टुगेदर दे फॉर्म द फाउंडेशन ऑफ हाउ वी एक्सपीरियंस एंड अंडरस्टैंड द डायनामिक्स ऑफ रियलिटी. सो ऑब्वियसली रीजन है वहाँ पे, यू परसीव टाइम, बट इंस्टिंक्ट में जैसे यू स्टॉप परसीविंग टाइम, like it's a singularity in your consciousness in a way. It is a obviously it's some kind of a hint that there exists something which is beyond the perception, which lives in this spatio-temporal world. Okay, ये थोड़ा बहुत मैंने लिखा है, फिर मैं आगे जा रहा हूँ जहाँ पे I think I wanted to discuss something which are now our I think the definition of intention morality, spontaneous morality. तो ये हम लोग तो ये बातें करते रहते हैं कि Abrahamic morality is intention morality, Hindu morality is natural morality, which is manifestation of some sort of spontaneous morality. तो अभी उसको हम लोग डिफाइन करेंगे. ठीक है. So morality, which was in truth a set of eternal non-dual principles aligned with sattva. Now I have to prove why I'm calling it eternal. But okay, so basically, from this treatment, ki okay, death exists as a tamas. You have instinct. I tried to prove ki there is a metaphysical existence beyond this dual physicality. Okay, the beyond the duality of physicality itself, the physical world. Now, morality, which was in truth, so morality is beyond that world. Okay, if there exists morality, which is eternal morality, it has to be beyond this duality of the physical world. It has to be beyond this physical world itself. Morality, which was in truth a set of eternal non-dual principles aligned with sattva and fostered by rajas, is exported to an agent outside one's own faculty, and that external agent does not hesitate to introduce inertness, decadence, delusion, dualistic, discriminatory pseudo-ethics in framing the moral codes to control man and his society. अगर मोरालिटी को तुम एक्सपोर्ट कर दोगे टू एन एक्सटर्नल एजेंट लाइक अब्राहमिक गॉड, वहां से वो जो ऑब्वियसली इफ यू एक्सपोर्ट इट फ्रॉम योर आत्मन, फ्रॉम योर स्पॉन्टेनियस इनर नॉन डुअल आत्मन, वहां से निकाल के जब मोरालिटी को एक्सटर्नलाइज करने के मतलब इफ यू कंसीव मोरालिटी एज समथिंग दैट यू कैन एक्सटर्नलाइज, वहां पे ही डुअलिज्म क्रिएट हो जाएगा, राइट? वहां पे ही मोरालिटी फिर वो फिजिकल डुअलिज्म जो है उसके अंदर आ जाएगा, विच मीन कि मोरालिटी विल नो लॉन्गर रिमेन इटर्नल. ओके, this morality born out of one's intention, that is the intention of the man himself, और ऑफ द एक्सटर्नल एजेंट, राइट? कि ठीक है, तुम बोल रहे हो कि चलो मान ही लेते हैं बाहर वाला एक हेवन है, जहाँ पे बहुत ऊपर एक हेवन है जहाँ पे एक गॉड एग्जिस्ट करता है, बट देन इवन इफ ही एग्जिस्ट, वहां पे फिर he is dictating morality out of intention, right? His intention is to dictate morality, and it is not coming out of spontaneous, deeply human expressiveness and honesty. Morality has to be spontaneous, okay? It has to be deep, it has to come from this human expressiveness and honesty, राइट? नाउ ये जो एक्सटर्नल एजेंट के द्वारा किया गया या फिर इंसानों के इंटेंशन के द्वारा क्रिएट किया गया जो मोरालिटी है, लेट्स नेम इट इंटेंशन मोरालिटी. And the morality comprised of sattva and rajas, emanating from the prana and rayi of a man and withstanding any guna vikara, जो जिसमें विकार नहीं आता, और एक्सटर्नल इम्पोजिशन ऑफ डुअलिटी, मोरालिटी. ऐसा मोरालिटी जिसमें जो ये जो फिजिकल डुअलिटी है उसके बियॉन्ड अगर कुछ है, जो प्राण और रई से निकल रहा है, और जो एक्चुअली कोई भी तरह का जो गुण विकार होता है, मतलब तमस जैसे जकड़ लेता है फिर उसको धीरे धीरे मौत की तरफ ले जाता है, उससे जो परे है, ठीक है, जो ह्यूमन स्पॉन्टिनिटी से आ रहा है, जो बिल्कुल ही अंदर से आ रहा है, कोई इंटेंशन से नहीं आ रहा है, वी आर कॉलिंग इट स्पॉन्टेनियस मोरालिटी. ठीक है. सो ऑब्वियसली joy, delight, empathy, courage, love, bravery, heroism, gratitude, pride, even anger, sorrow, pathos, pity, these can be spontaneous emotions, right, as a reaction to some environmental factor, but they come purely from quote unquote the heart, without any it may come from the core without any pre-decided intentions, right? So they are somehow they are a little virtuous, and they bring in situ some value, meaning, and purpose to life in the most natural manner. It is because of the spontaneity and honesty of these emotions that a Hindu find a connection with them, find a weird fulfillment in spectating these emotions in them. ठीक है, उनके माइंड में जैसे ये सब इमोशन आता है, it Hindu finds a weird fulfillment in spectating these emotions blooming within him or his mind in his stream of consciousness. Joy or sorrow, delight or anger, bravery or pathos. Avidly experiencing all these natural emotions lead him toward a strange sense of completeness, sense of fulfillment and attainment of meaning in the most pious and virtuous way. This delight, this sense of fulfillment is something that essentially distinguishes a Hindu from the Abrahamics. A Hindu always knows that whatever he has been experiencing in his life is not the result of some top down agenda, or he's at least conscious about it, fed by any power, politics, padri, or prophet, but rather of his karma and his spontaneous functioning of the nature, and the spontaneous functioning of the nature. Or at least he can distinguish between a propaganda and a spontaneous event in reality. He senses his life not as a flimsy fabrication designed by the grand intention of a state or a religion or a cult, but rather as a unique benevolent gift from Mother Nature, in whose womb his very Atman and his karma reside forever as indestructibles. This experience of immortality and vitality comes manifestly from the experience of true and honest emotions, not from the compulsion to justify the imposition of religious dogmas to his own soul, like an Abrahamics. Since he verily knows that his thoughts, emotions, and actions are true and honest, not mired by any externally imposed religiosity, and because truth is always above religion, the life of a Hindu can relish a sense of joy and fulfillment through the assumption of his own life's ownership. And ownership, which is much fundamental than any belief, faith, event, or perception of a man. This ownership elevates him from the cradle of naivety to the highest heaven, quote unquote heaven, of a happy, fulfilling, responsible, manly life. In this quote unquote heaven, there is no externally imposed Almighty God craving for more and more followers. This heaven is to each his own, a deeply personal attainment awarded to a noble man for his perpetual attempt to attain divinity through diligence and perfection. Any experience of life, thus good or bad, becomes truly a unique and subjective experience, avidly owned by an individual in the entire universe. And these conscious experiences give a Hindu man a sense of freedom, independence, and immortality. This uniqueness and specificity and subjectivity of his experiences deliver him a fine awareness of his life, karma, faith, belief, spirituality, knowledge, and wisdom. All these genuinely bind his quote unquote soul directly with the all powerful forces in the universe in the strongest possible way, not through fear, but through relishing the very juice of life. This constant awareness of his own self and his own deeds further elevates his soul gradually beyond petty earthly emotions and experiences to the realization of some divine power within him that provides strength to his every stride of life, delight to his every deed, pride to his every pursuit, and meaning to his morality, the pagan, natural, spontaneous Hindu morality. Right? So here I am trying to prove ki basically I have defined the intention morality, spontaneous morality, and I am saying ki theek hai, you are in this environment and the environment is basically evoking emotions and within you. But a Hindu doesn't try to misinterpret or subvert the narrative of this emotion. He honestly experienced this and he's being watchful about this, right? And through this very observation of his emotion, of his own emotion, his own mind, and his karma, his faith, he actually he experienced this uniqueness of life, right? He can understand his stand, his position in the entire universe, and that is some sort of an immortal, it is some sort of an immortality, right? That ki, okay, I am unique in this world and I am divine, right? What I'm experiencing is my pratyaksha, and this is unique. This constant awareness of his own self and his own deeds elevates his soul beyond any pettiness, right? So again, Rudra, are you here? I'm going to drink some water, and meanwhile we can take some comment and questions if there is any. Rudra, are you here? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, but there are no questions to discuss. I think we can open the stream
Anyone want to
to
join? Anyone want to join?
yeah, if anyone wants to join, then check out the members only post for the stream joining link. In the meantime, let me share this document.
So from here we can we'll try to define dharma as natural being in appearance, but probably in the next lecture, because I can already see this is going to be a very it will take one more episode probably from here. What we are left with, so we have discussed the natural and spontaneous morality. Now intention morality we have defined, but we should now define ki, can intention be the basis of morality? But these things we'll probably discuss in another episode next time. And there we will define karma, dharma, and all these things um, with respect to this framework that we have been developing. ठीक है? तो हाँ, if anyone wants to join, maybe we can have a nice discussion and sort of comments and critique on this lecture. Comments तो काफी सारे हैं लग रहा है. Nener want to join? Rishi is there, Nener is there. So maybe you guys can join if you want to. आज कोई नहीं ज्वाइन करेगा, भूपेंद्र नहीं है इसलिए. चलो, आई थिंक इट्स अ गुड पॉइंट टू स्टॉप इट हियर. नेक्स्ट लेक्चर 4 में यही डिस्कस करेंगे, हिंदू मोरालिटी इज नेचुरल मोरालिटी. इसी जो आज जो लगभग डिस्कस किए उसको ही आगे बढ़ाएंगे, ठीक है. और फिर कुछ अच्छा कमेंट है तो ले लेते हैं यहाँ पे, अगर ठीक ठाक कुछ कमेंट अगर है. वीकेंड में करो दादा, मैं ज्वाइन करूँगा. अच्छा अच्छा, ओके. वीकेंड को मैं आई थिंक आई एम गोइंग टू बैंगलोर एक्चुअली. मेरा जो वो हिंदू जेनोसाइड वाला जो बुक है, वो उसका बात चल रहा है कन्नड़ में एक्चुअली ट्रांसलेट करने का. तो वो बात करने के लिए जाऊंगा, और ऑब्वियसली मेरे एक दो दोस्त हैं उनसे मिलूंगा फिर. तो वीकेंड को तो आई थिंक नहीं कर पाएंगे इस बार. बट हाँ, मंडे या ट्यूसडे को रखते हैं, फिर इसी को कंटिन्यू करेंगे. हेलो ऋषि.
अरे नमस्कार विजित दा. नमस्कार
नमस्ते
नमस्कार.
नमस्ते.
धर्मा को भी नमस्ते. सो ना, असाधारण अच्छा, सॉरी, हिंदी में बोल रहा था. बहुत ही असाधारण था आज का प्रस्तुति, और शायद सारे जितने भी दर्शक है उन्हें भी अच्छा लगा होगा आज का सेशन जो हुआ है. So I wanted to talk to you about one what should I say, scenario where right now, since you have proven pretty much on what spontaneous morality is and how Hindu morality is the natural morality, should we try at least in this episode, if time permits for you, should we try at least deconstructing one so-called moral prescription from the Abrahamics for today, like say, as Christianism says, God is love. So, can we discuss on that at least, like how love is
Yeah.
not something very spontaneous?
Exactly.
What
So,
look like?
first of all, when they are saying God is love or this kind of thing, I mean, obviously, they always have a historical context. I mean, they themselves claim कि अगर कोई कुरान में आयत आया या फिर कहीं पे भी क्रिश्चियनिज्म में कहीं कुछ लिखा गया, इट हैज़ टू बी व्यूड इन अ स्पेसिफिक हिस्टोरिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट. तो उसके लिए फिर इस्लाम में जैसे हदीत आ जाता है, क्रिश्चियनिज्म में भी उसका कॉन्टेक्स्ट आ ही जाता है, इंटरप्रिटेशन वगैरह. सो ऑब्वियसली जब तुम हिस्टोरिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में एक स्टेटमेंट को डाल रहे हो, देन फिर तो ऑब्वियसली इट हैज इट्स बर्थ एंड डेथ. दैट स्टेटमेंट इटसेल्फ हैज अ कॉन्टेक्स्ट. ओके. दूसरी बात, अगर हिस्टोरी, सो बेसिकली दैट नाउ stoop the whole book, Abrahamic Ahle Kitab, to the level of a political book and not a spiritual book. अगर seriously, अगर if Islam is claiming कि Quran has to be, and the ayats, or all those violent ayats, they are required to be interpreted in a very specific historical context, that makes Quran a political or historical book, not a spiritual book. But simultaneously, then they claim ki, okay, this is a book which is valid till Roze Qayamat, till the very last day. Now these are these are paradoxes, right? These are anomalies in their own statement. Anomalies इसलिए आ रहा है क्योंकि the scripture that they have developed, it सी एक्चुअली कोई चीज नॉन डुअल होने के लिए आइडियली उसको अव्यक्त होना चाहिए. जब जब भी कोई चीज व्यक्त हो जाता है वो फिर डुअल स्पेस में इंटर कर ही जाता है. बट उनका क्या है, उनका तो व्यक्त तो है ही, ऊपर से उसका एक इंटेंशन है. ठीक है. सो बिकॉज ऑफ ऑल दीज थिंग्स एक्चुअली वो इंटेंशन मोरालिटी का पार्ट बन जाता है. और मैं हम लोग नेक्स्ट लेक्चर में डिस्कस करेंगे कि इंटेंशन कैन नॉट बी अ बेसिस ऑफ मोरालिटी. और उसके पीछे मैं कुछ 15-20 रीजन बता दूंगा. सो जब ये इंटेंशन मोरालिटी का हिस्सा बन जाता है. दूसरा पॉइंट ये है कि गॉड इज लव जब बोलते हो, तब गॉड पे भी तुम एक गुण इम्पोज करते हो. बट गॉड अगर in the sense it is understood, at least in this non-dualistic structure, God should not have any gunas. राइट, इट हैज टू बी त्रिगुणातीत। तो गॉड को जब लव बोल देते हो या फिर, तो उसका एक डुअल स्पेस क्रिएट कर देते हो ऑब्वियसली, बिकॉज जब तुम गॉड को लव बोल दोगे तो जो हेट्रेड होगा उस पर एक डेविल क्रिएट होगा। और गॉड जितना इटर्नल रहेगा तुम्हारे लिए, गॉड जितना देर तक एग्जिस्ट करेगा, उसी फ्रेमवर्क में पैरेलली इन दैट रेसिप्रोकल स्पेस डेविल भी एग्जिस्ट करेगा, and both will be equally sort of potent and equally powerful, the god and devil. तो तुम डुअल, ये जो फ्रेमवर्क है, कोई भी डुअल फ्रेमवर्क में गॉड को रख ही नहीं सकते, ठीक है। So that is my response to this Jesus is love or God is love and all these things.
Okay. Also, one another thing, I think you can comment on this far more better. Uh, how is it that someone posits their so-called supreme creator as an emotion? Like, I don't get that process at all. Love is frankly
Exactly.
an emotion which comes out of attachment to some other than you, or
Exactly.
maybe even your body. Like, so something which is even you.
Right.
At least from a standpoint of ignorance, you still love your body and you love your feet or something. It's a very crude example, but yeah. But
No, once you
how
are
is this
watchful.
possible that?
Hmm.
Dada, please.
Once you are watchful, right, quote
Okay,
unquote watchful, you can see your emotions, you can see your mind
true.
as this river जहाँ पे ये सारे emotions आ रहे हैं जा रहे हैं. So once you are watchful, you can see it getting is this being born and being dead. So if God is love, which is an emotion in your
Indeed.
mind, तो तुम देख सकते हो कि वो जन्म भी लिया और वो मर भी गया at some point. It doesn't stay with you in your
Hmm.
mind. So then you, when you say God is love, simultaneously you start to impose the mortality on God, so to say.
Indeed, indeed. And also, it somehow represents to me, at least, a fickleness, some sort of, what should I say, non consistency. Like, uh,
Right.
love is a very contingent aspect, right? Like contingent
Exactly.
emotion, like something which favors you, then alone you love something, or else
Right.
you cannot. Even
It is an
though,
emotion. It is an emotion that has a birth and a death, right? At a given point, um, in
true,
your
true,
in
true.
your hmm, in your mind.
Yeah, yeah.
जैसे
Like
बोला
even
जाता है,
if,
माया, लव जो है वो माया का हिस्सा है, भगवान माया का हिस्सा
yeah,
नहीं है। माया क्या है? जो चेंज होता है, जो परिवर्तनशील है, वही माया है। गॉड,
indeed,
फिर अगर लव हो गया, गॉड भी परिवर्तनशील हो जाएगा, फिर वो माया का हिस्सा बन जाएगा, वो भूतलोक का हिस्सा बन जाएगा, वो सत्य नहीं हो सकता फिर, और वो ईश्वर भी नहीं हो सकता फिर।
amazing, amazing. Because let's take an example from New Testament only. So maybe Jesus says somewhere, right, that you must love your enemy, because uh, even like pagans love those who favor them. So you should be something very different from the pagans, and therefore you should be loving your enemies. I don't get this statement at all. How is it sensible? Like it's against natural morality, as you say. Like
Right.
how antithetical it is, how anti-realist it is, but yet this is purported every time. And Jesus himself didn't love so many people, moneylenders,
Exactly.
rabbis. So it's contradictory in his behavior, but yet it is being told as a great prescription. Supposedly, it
Right.
will teach world peace and so on. I don't get this at all.
Right.
So another, I think,
See,
uh, emotional.
the moment you start imposing this sort of dual framework, na, or you inherently introduce this dualism, जैसे God is love or something, which is again, as we have proven कि this is a dual framework, फिर you lose the universality, right? You can
Indeed.
achieve universality only by walking on that thin rope of non-dualism. इफ गॉड इज लव, देन जब दुनिया शुरू हुआ था फिर वहां पे लव भी था कुछ, मतलब इट बिकम्स अ वेरी एब्सर्ड स्टेटमेंट ना.
Completely. And it is an emotion born out of attachment to other objects. And if God
राइट.
is supposed to be that very emotion, what's the other thing that we are loving then?
राइट.
I mean, do you love now? What sort of nonsense is this? I don't get this at all.
Exactly. And for example, naturality, when we talk about naturality, so there is naturality in the physical world itself in terms of principle, right? For example, a stone, it does not have love, still it is functioning, right? So the God is not present in the functioning of physics, right? Uh,
Indeed. He's away from the universe or from real
right.
world in his throne in heaven or somewhere. So
And he
useless.
doesn't have power over it, right? If God is love, then the stone is not being driven by love, so it is not being dictated by God. So फिर तो सब कुछ
Mm.
उसके रेम से बाहर चला गया ये सब चीजें.
Completely, completely. And if God is love, then what sort of world has He made? I mean, this
Right.
argument can be made every time against Christians. Obviously, they will have some decrepit answers which will never be agreed upon, but still, yeah, they fall into that
And
trap again and
for
again.
I mean in contrast you have here you have values जहाँ से देवता निकल रहे हैं, those natural powers, right? उसके ऊपर प्रिंसिपल बैठता है, उसके
Indeed.
ऊपर जैसे सनातन बैठा हुआ है, राइट? तो क्योंकि सबसे ऊपर प्रिंसिपल है, उसके नीचे देवताज है. काफी टाइम वो जो प्रिंसिपल है उसको थोड़ा बहुत हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं, पर्सनलाइज करके उसको ईश्वर मानते हैं. बट ये जो देवता होते हैं, जो वेदों में जितने देवता है, दे आर बाउंड बाय प्रिंसिपल्स, दे कैन नॉट जस्ट डू एनीथिंग एंड स्टिल बी कॉल्ड देवतास और पूजनीयस, राइट? कि इनका पूजा करेंगे. इनफैक्ट यू सी कि ये जो ब्रह्मा और सरस्वती का जो कहानी बोला जाता है, ब्रह्मा ग्रीव, सरस्वती क्या है? सरस्वती इज नॉलेज. तो ब्रह्मा
Mm.
ग्रीव अटैचमेंट ओवर सरस्वती मीन्स ब्रह्मा का जैसे नॉलेज पैदा हुआ, फिर वहां से ब्रह्मा का ईगो आ गया. और ईगो जब आ
Mm.
गया, दैट इज लाइक एन एक्स्ट्रा एक्स्ट्रा माथा, राइट? कि ब्रह्मा का 4 सर हो गया.
Yep.
तो एक सर को फिर शिव जी को काटना पड़ा, राइट? सो इट
Yep.
इट सेज कि इवन एज अ गॉड इफ यू ग्रो एन ईगो, तो तुम्हें वहां से फिर नीचे गिरा दिया जाएगा, स्टेटस से गिरा दिया जाएगा, बिकॉज ब्रह्मा ग्रीव ईगो, बिकॉज ही स्टूप डाउन टू द लेवल ऑफ दिस डुअलिज्म, दिस डुअल फिजिकल वर्ल्ड. ईगो कहाँ रह सकता है? ईगो वहीं पे रह सकता है ना जहाँ पे देर इज एन एजेंट एंड इट्स एनवायरमेंट. उसके इंटरेक्शन से जो गुणविकार होता है, वहां से ईगो पैदा होता है ना. तो बिकॉज ब्रह्मा stooped down that lower, कि he entered the realm of this dual physical nashwar, right? This mortal world. He lost his sort of देवत्व, right? कि ब्रह्मा का पूजा नहीं होगा, ये डिक्टेट कर दिया गया. So just imagine how brutal the Hindu, quote unquote brutal the Hindu scripture is, कि it is treating Brahma as not पूजनीय, because उसके पास ईगो आ गया जो एक्चुअली नॉन डुअल नहीं है.
Indeed, indeed.
और
Another upakhyan
और
is
आप
there, right?
अब्राहमिक
You
गॉड
know
को
about
देखो,
it.
अब्राहमिक गॉड का तो ईगो से भरा हुआ है. अब्राहमिक गॉड इज फुल ऑफ ईगो. जितने भी डुअल जो जो डुअल फीलिंग तो नहीं कहूंगा, जो भी गुण होता है या बहुत गुण कह सकते हो, उससे तो अब्राहमिक गॉड भरा हुआ है. इफ यू रीड कुरान, कुरान इज सेइंग कि मैं तो मक्कार हूँ, ठीक है, मैं चालबाज हूँ, कि इंसान भी चाल चलता है, मैं भी चाल चलता हूँ, बट मैं सबसे बड़ा चालबाज हूँ. सो एंड कि मेरे पास अगर ना हो तो तुम्हें मैं हेल में बॉर्न करूंगा, मेरा पूजा या फिर मेरा जो भी है इबादत नहीं किया तो मैं तुम्हें सड़ाऊंगा, मैं मुनाफिकों को जहन्नम का ईंधन बनाऊंगा, फिर जो काफिर है उनको उनका खाल उतार के फिर उनको तंदूर बनाऊंगा उनका. इट इज
Oh
फुल ऑफ
my
ईगो,
God.
राइट?
It's like some sort of Okay, let I will not comment more. This is a dangerous territory.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
manifestly, you know whose ego it is. You know whose ego it is. I'm not that person who cannot be named, right?
completely.
That Islamic God is basically his ego and nothing else.
Like it's like he's projecting. Someone is projecting out of that
Hmm.
inner wishes. That
Right,
deep
exactly.
down, also
Hmm. We know it is. It is a fact.
completely, like also with this whole expression of God is love. I think this is also a expression of ego, right, over here as well. So it's
Yes.
like some sort of superiority you are trying to uphold over others,
No,
especially
see,
those who are
it is a fact that without an ego you cannot perceive emotion. अहंग जो है अहंग से
completely.
तो ये सब चीजें आता है ना. तो जब अहंग ही खत्म हो जाता है फिर वहां से तो फिर यात्रा चालू होता है कि अहंग के ऊपर जो है बियॉन्ड अहंग जो होता है वहां पे फिर इमोशन वो जो डुअलिज्म है वो वाला फिर वो बंद होना चालू होता है. राइट, यू जस्ट शॉट इट. यू शॉट दिस होल. क्योंकि जब ये डुअलिटी का क्या होता है, अहंग है इसलिए ये है. जब अहंग बंद हो जाएगा तब तुम वैसे चीजों को परसीव करना भी बंद कर दोगे. तो तुम लव हो हेट हो इसको परसीव करना बंद कर दोगे जब तुम्हारा अहंग खत्म हो जाता है. इनफैक्ट आई थिंक गीता में एक श्लोक है यार, chapter 18. uh, no, no. Let me. Yeah, you say something. I'm finding it out. Um,
Yeah, okay. So I'll be sharing a quote over here. Moderator, I will just ask him if he could, uh, let's say, highlight that for the time being, because it would be very great
yes.
uh, for others to look at it.
Yes, this is 18.17, right? 18.17 in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is saying it is taking that this rational to an extreme. ठीक है कि अहंग जब खत्म हो जाता है तब फिजिकलिटी जो जो फिजिकल वर्ल्ड है तुम्हारे लिए वो एग्जिस्ट करना बंद कर जाता है. कैसे बोल रहे हैं, यश्चन अहंकृतो भावो बुद्धिर्यश्च नालिप्यते हत्वापि सा इमान लोकन न हंति न निबध्यते. मतलब one who is not motivated by ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, he does not kill, nor he is he bound by his actions. ठीक है. अगर
Hmm.
तुम्हारा अहंग खत्म हो गया है तो तुम्हारे यहाँ तो कोई वध भी हो रहा है तो उसका तुम्हें भुगतना नहीं पड़ेगा. और तुम फिर मार ही नहीं रहे हो. यू डोंट इवन की ना
Completely.
ना हंती ना निबध्यते. ठीक है, ना तुम मार रहे हो ना
Because
तुम्हें
there
कोई
is no
मार.
doer. Completely.
हाँ
It's
ईगो.
from the standpoint of Atman. So who's the one doing the action at all?
हाँ
You
वो कोई
are
दूसरा कर ही रहा है. वेस्टर्न फिलोसोफर कॉल इट एक्शन एट ए डिस्टेंस बट रियली दिस इज नॉट एक्शन एट ए. दिस इज रियल ट्रांसेंडेंस. यहाँ पे डिस्टेंस नहीं है. दिस इज कंप्लीट
exactly.
इमीडिएसी टू योर आत्मन. यू आर जस्ट गेटिंग टू क्लोज. यू आर नॉट डिस्टेंसिंग from your own atman. You are just knowing your atman. You are being the atman. It cannot be action from a distance.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Completely. So another, I think, emotion we can maybe discuss about uh, is it, what should I say? So there is this whole thinking process, right, in within these Abrahamic frameworks about um, a very crude hatred towards wealth, like wealth earning or wealth creators that we see. Uh, so, for example, for the audience, I will just refer to it. Jesus has a very funny quote that uh, uh, a camel can go through the eye of a needle, uh, unlike unlike a money lender will be able to go through
Mhm.
heaven. So it's like that sort of impossible scenario. A
Right.
moneylender or a wealth creator is the is so worse that and so sinful that he cannot even get to heaven. But even a camel
Basically,
can
he's
go through
cursing
a
the
needle.
Jews. He's cursing the Jews of his
Oh,
time, probably. That's the
oh,
political context.
okay. Now again, it's a political thing then. Wow.
Right.
Mm,
इवन इस्लाम में भी सूद लेना इसीलिए हराम है ना कि जीव लोग सूद लेते थे उस टाइम में.
ah, okay. Yeah, because I was going to refer to that whole incident, right? When Jesus goes to the temple, I think in Jerusalem, and he sees the moneylender's table over there where currencies are exchanging. He
Right.
flips that table and beats the guy with some hunter or some whip. I think with a whip,
Right.
he
Right.
starts
Right.
to beat that guy. So on.
Exactly.
What sort of behavior? And how is this moral at all? But even this is called out as moral, like hatred
Right.
towards wealth creators
These
or
are political. These are
normal.
political ideologies. These are historiocentric ideologies. That's what. Na? कि in that context, maybe on that day specifically, this guy was a moral agent. But
Hmm.
it is
I mean,
highly
mhm.
contextual because these are political ideologies. These are historiocentric ideologies. These are not natural ideologies. They are claiming them कि अच्छा ये religion है, ये सब चीज natural नहीं है, वो natural नहीं है ना. They have lost naturality. Naturalness खत्म होने के बाद जो जो सिंथेटिक जो मोरालिटी आता है, जो डॉक्टर्ड मोरालिटी आता है, वो बेसिकली ये अब्राहमिज्म है. Hatred for the
So
Jews, hatred for this and that, hatred for I don't know disbelievers, unbelievers.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So to prove Bijitda's comment before, and maybe he can comment on this far more better. So this is a passage which I have taken from the great book of Sitaram Goelji, A History of Hindu-Christian Encounters. So in that, in one of the chapters, it's talking about Swami Dayanand Saraswati. He says, it's talking about Dayanand Saraswati. So he found that Jehovah was not only bloodthirsty, vindictive, and unjust, but also extremely whimsical. Jehovah alone said Dayananda could choose a monster like Moses as his prophet and reveal a barbarous book like the Pentateuch. Dayanand summed up the character of Jehovah in a Sanskrit sloka which deserves to be quoted verbatim. Shane rustam, shane tustam, rushta tustam, shane shane. अव्यवस्थितचित्तस्य प्रसादोऽपि भयङ्करः. He is displeased in this moment and pleased in the next. He is displeased in this moment and pleased in the he takes no time in travel from dissatisfaction to satisfaction. Mind is deranged. Even a favor from this being is to be feared. Only a savage society,
विक्षिप्ति.
said
राम
Dayananda,
स्वरूप जी
can
कहते हैं
project.
ना, राम स्वरूप जी बोलते हैं कि, और हम लोग डिस्कस भी करेंगे थोड़ा सा, कि अब्राहमिक
Mhm.
गॉड आर born from the विक्षिप्ति लेवल. विक्षिप्त और विक्षिप्त जैसे वो लेवल होता है जहाँ पे इंटेंशन मोरालिटी रहता है, उसी से अब्राहमिक गॉड पैदा होता है. इसीलिए डिसप्लीज प्लीज मतलब ये इतना जो भी टाइड आ रहा है, टाइड के हिसाब से राइड कर रहा है ये जो अब्राहमिक गॉड है.
Completely. Uh,
It's not
and
eternal.
this
It's
is
not
exactly,
eternal.
yeah, like, I mean, someone might try to defend it as okay, so he was responding to issue. Like they will say, right? That's the go-to argument they will give. कि
Right.
अच्छा इस इशू में गुस्सा करना था, उस इशू में प्यार करना था, वो सब. But it's so much
If you're that much reactive,
like
right? If
passionate.
you हाँ, if
Exactly.
you if you're that much worldly, if even if you don't understand the idea of dualism that we are talking, if you're so worldly that you are reacting to that external typhoon, right? बाहर तो कुछ भी चलता रहता है, बाहर कोई भी जंग चलता रहता है, कोई भी वही टॉर्नेडो चलता रहता है, इतना ज्यादा झंझा चलता रहता है, उसमें तुम रिएक्ट इतना करने लगोगे तो गॉड कैसे रहोगे भाई?
Completely. And let's take example of Son of God in this, because he is the most peaceful guy on earth. So this guy gets angry over a fig tree. Yeah,
Right,
this guy gets angry over a fig tree which is not giving out its fruits in a off season, and he
right,
curses it. And for
right,
that, there is a very elaborate justification. Ki, Are he's son of God. He's seeing from heaven that Jerusalem has gone astray, and therefore it is cursing. Like what the hell? Like seriously,
right.
it's so much stretching it now.
That's the problem.
But over there as
You
well.
cannot derive morality from this sort of विक्षिप्ति. मतलब अगर इंसान सीरियसली माइंड पे चढ़ने लगे हमेशा, वो इंसान तो पागल, और पागल दिखता है भाई अब्राहमिक कल्चर में. लिटरली वी सी हाउ मैड दीज पीपल आर. Once you start living in these countries for a while, you get to see how mad these people are, because they cannot see their mind. They are always writing their mind. तुम मन के साथ भागने लगोगे तो तुम पागल हो ही जाओगे. You have to be watchful. You have to be able to see your mind. कि एक्चुअली हुआ क्या है. ओ शिट, आई दिस रिएक्शन, समवन कमेंटेड समथिंग, और अचानक से मेरे अंदर एक ऐसा रिएक्शन आ गया कि मैं बिल्कुल ही मतलब तिलमिला उठा और पागल हो गया मैं. आई एम नॉट इन माई हैप्पी कंटेंट मूड, राइट, इन माई whatever this absolute peaceful mind. तो मैं हर चीजों पे बोलते हैं नहीं, हर चीजों पे रिएक्ट करने लगे तो पागल होने. दैट इज प्रिसाइजली दिस गाइज रिएक्टिंग टू एवरीथिंग, which is actually bad, right? Which is the epitome of madness.
Yeah. And these sort of guys are the agents of uh, chaos, and they are well
Yeah,
controlled by some other people the most. I
right.
think you can maybe speak on this as well, right? So in China, there was this case, right? So after Christianity entered there, some guy claimed himself to be brother of Jesus or something, and
Mhm.
uh,
I don't know about this
he
one.
committed a rebellion. Yeah. Massacre, huge massacres happened. I think it's in
अच्छा अच्छा.
18th century. Dada, you should please talk about that because this will really help us.
Let's take it up. Yes, let's take it up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
बट उस
So
तरह
I
गॉड को
think,
बनाओगे तो वो पागलपंती ही आएगा और कुछ नहीं आएगा. एंड देन दे स्टार्ट
indeed.
टॉकिंग अबाउट माँ काली, कि माँ काली का जो विभत्स होता है वो देख के वो लोग डर जाते हैं कि लाइक ये गॉडेस कैसे हो सकती है, राइट. Yes, obviously, if you are that much evil in your mind, you will see
Exactly.
this kind of image. उसीलिए बनाया गया है माँ काली को, कि देख के तुम्हारे अंदर जो है उसे वो निकल के आए कि हाँ मुझे डरना चाहिए, मुझे डर लग रहा है, राइट. तुम
Indeed.
उसके ऊपर उठ जाओगे तो माँ काली भी प्रशांति, बिल्कुल ही शांति वाली इमेज में दिखने लगेगी. तुम उतना नीचे
Hmm,
रहोगे तो जितना नीचे तुम रहोगे तुम्हारे इंटेंशन मोरालिटी के लिए, उतना भयंकर माँ काली दिखेगी. इट इज अ फैक्ट. ठीक है, जितना
completely.
ऊपर उठने लगोगे उतना माँ काली उतना ही शांत और माँ दिखेगी उतना ही.
Ekdam, ekdam. The like the iconography is so encouraging for us to look at. Ki, Are Ma
राइट.
is there, she will protect us from the evil, and they get trouble. Or बाप रे ये क्या है? Devil या कुछ है. Every time. Winston Churchill, right? He said something very
राइट.
nasty. I will not speak over here. Over Ganesha and
राइट.
Makali, I think specifically. He
राइट.
mentioned, horrendous. अरे यार ठीक है रहने दो भाई horrendous. This
नहीं,
guy
इन लोग देख
permitted famines
के हम,
and killed us and
राइट. Because you in Hinduism you have, because these are again we know कि ये स्पेसिफिक गुण से बनाया गया है. मतलब जैसे निर्गुण ब्रह्म है, ये सारे जो इस हिसाब से हम लोग मूर्ति पूजा करते हैं वो सगुण होता है ना. उसका एक रूप होता है, एक
Mhm.
आकार होता है, एक स्पेसिफिक चीज को फॉर्म होता है. सो अब वो सारे पॉजिटिव चीजों को डिफाई करते हैं जितने भी मूर्ति होते हैं ये हुए. लेकिन तुम्हारे अंदर अगर वही नेगेटिविटी है, वो घृणा है, तो तुम्हें वो मूर्ति में भी वो घृणा ही दिखेगा. इट इज अ प्रोजेक्शन ऑफ योर घृणा. सेम मूर्ति में मुझे भगवान दिख सकता है, सेम मूर्ति में एक जो कोई जिहादी है उसको गंदी गंदी चीजें दिख सकता है. इट इज एक्चुअली प्रतिमा,
Of course.
राइट? तो प्रतिमा क्या होता है? एक्चुअली हमारा ही प्रोजेक्शन होता है वो. तो तुम्हें गंदा दिख रहा
Beautiful,
है, दैट इज
beautiful.
द डर्ट ऑफ योर माइंड. इट इज नॉट द प्रॉब्लम विथ द मूर्ति दैट वी आर डूइंग पूजा ऑफ. इसमें
Oh,
हिंदुओं को भी
amazing,
खुद
amazing.
को छोटा नहीं समझना चाहिए कि भाई अरे उसको क्यों नहीं दिख रहा है. भाई तुम्हें दिख रहा है ना, उससे खुश रहो तुम.
Exactly.
उसको उसको दिख रहा है तो उसकी प्रॉब्लम है भाई, तुम्हारे नहीं है वो.
हाँ, it's like getting worried about some animal not honoring the book in front of you. Physics book रख दो उसके सामने, वो चाटेगा या कुछ और कर देगा. Why are you
एग्जैक्टली,
getting enraged over it?
राइट.
He's an animal.
और ये हो ही सकता है, ये हो ही सकता है, बिकॉज द मोमेंट यू आर इम्पोजिंग गुना इन अ प्रतिमा, राइट,
Hmm.
ऑब्वियसली उस पर ड्यूअलिज्म आएगा. मतलब तुम सबको कन्विंस नहीं कर सकते. यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड कि ओके, जब गुण आ गया एक चीज में तो फिर उसका एक एक्सक्लूसिव रेसिप्रोकल स्पेस रहेगा. यू हैव टू नो हाउ टू डील विद दैट. उनको
Amazing
समझाओ, फिर
point,
इसीलिए
amazing.
उनको उनको निर्गुण समझाना होता है फिर उन्हें, कि देखो तुम्हारे भगवान के अंदर ये
Indeed.
सब आ रहा है, जैसे हम लोग डिस्कस किया, इससे तुम्हारे भगवान को इस चुंगल से निकालना होगा. तब उन्हें फिर निर्गुण समझाने लग जाओ. जब वो मूर्ति पूजा से जब वो रूठ जाते हैं, उन्हें फिर ब्रह्म समझाने लगे. फिर वो ब्रह्म को भी इंटेंशन मोरालिटी का पार्ट बना देते हैं. ठीक है. ये सब तो प्रॉब्लम आता ही है.
Yeah, they will keep corrupting one after the other.
यस,
Anything that we teach them, they will corrupt it into something else. योगा के साथ जो
एग्जैक्टली,
किया है उन्होंने, like,
एग्जैक्टली,
how can you corrupt something so exquisite like yoga? But
राइट.
welcome to West. उसको भी उसको भी खराब कर दिया. Nothing remains pure. अरे यार, they
वही ना, जब
and
जब इंटेंशन डालते हो, स्पॉन्टिनिटी जब खो जाता है एक चीज, तो यही होता है, यही होने वाला है हर चीजों के साथ.
like Dada, I read that day how supposedly in 19th century Christian missionaries were attacking our icons like Sri Krishna Bhagwan, saying that देखो हमारा जीसस इतना नॉन वायलेंट है और शादी भी नहीं की. Apparently that makes you moral now because you are not married and you are very non-violent. So non-violent, how is he non-violent? He is hating over money lenders and beating them up with whips just because he
नहीं, हमारा प्रॉब्लम ये है
at
ना
the
कि हम लोगों ने उनका स्क्रिप्चर पढ़ा ही नहीं टू अंडरस्टैंड. भाई ये तो मतलब वही है कि
yeah, yeah, yeah. We will not say anything much more triggering. Just critiquing. Yeah,
और जो
yeah,
हाँ,
Dada, go on, please.
दिल्ली वेली वाला जो है.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That meme.
वो पढ़ा ही नहीं. जब तक खोलोगे नहीं तब तक कैसे पता चलेगा कि उसके अंदर हीरा है या फिर उसके अंदर टट्टी है. वही बात है.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So,
जय माँ काली.
yeah, Jai Mata Di, Jai Mata. I mean, at the same time, they will talk about love. At the same time, they will talk about non-violence. At the same time, they will talk about crusades also as a legitimate
राइट.
expression of
वो
love of
बोलते
God
हैं
as
कि
well.
these are, you have to understand. अब जैसे देखो, वो लोग क्वेश्चन कर, अरे ट्रम्प तो मतलब वो क्रिश्चियन नहीं है, वो तो ये जो आजकल मागा मूवमेंट चल रहा है, इट इज नॉट ए क्रिश्चियन. हम लोग जैसे बात ऑलरेडी कर चुके हैं, दिस इज प्रिसाइजली क्रिश्चियन मूवमेंट. क्रिश्चियन मूवमेंट इससे अलग कुछ है ही नहीं. बिकॉज हियर यू हैव अ डॉक्ट्रिन, you want to assume some totalitarian control. So it is very much again homologous to Christianism, whatever is going on in US. तुम्हें लग सकता है कि
Completely. And
नहीं है.
Dada, isn't this true? After all, the earliest Christians, like the so-called, if Jesus was true, like that's also doubtful now. But if Jesus was true, the earliest set of followers that he had, they were not very good people. I don't think so, right? You can, am I correct? You can tell, you can say, speak on that much more.
मैं इस पे बात कर सकता हूँ, बट फिर वही विवाद हो जाएगा. एंड
Oh, okay, okay.
देयर आर वेरियस अकाउंट्स कि जीसस का जब क्रूसिफिक्शन हुआ था उसके पिछले रात जीसस ने क्या क्या किया था.
Oh,
um,
okay,
हाँ. So there
okay.
are various accounts. और I think we have discussed this in one of our lectures on Christianism कि ये लोग शहादत के लिए जाते थे, right? Just like jihadis, they used to go to achieve शहादत. और जिस दिन इनका शहादत होने कि हम लोग रोमन सोल्जर के सामने जाकर उनके तंग करेंगे और शहीद हो जाएंगे तो हमें जन्नत मिलेगा, राइट? सेम आइडिया है क्रिश्चियनिज्म में. तो ये नेक्स्ट दिन जब हमारा मौत होगा उसके पिछले दिन बहुत सारा दारू पीना, बहुत सारा सेक्स करना, ये जो एट्रीब्यूट है इसका एक सोर्स है ना, इसका एक कोट अनकोट सुन्नत है. सो यू नो वो सुन्नत कहाँ से आया है और ओरिजिनली किसने किया था. कि नेक्स्ट दिन मैं मरूंगा, मुझे टांग दिया जाएगा, तो आज मैं जितना मर्जी क्या बोलते हैं डिबॉचरी जो भी है ये सब करता हूँ. ये किसने पहली बार किया था, जिन्हें देख के फिर ये सारे जो क्रिश्चियन से इनरेज हुए
Wow.
थे.
I mean, these sort of dark
अब
history
अब
are
अब
not known
अब
to
वही
people.
आइकॉन को अब वही आइकॉन को कितना ज्यादा वही ना ये सब बना दिया गया कि लाइक कृष्ण के साथ इसके साथ उसके साथ कंपेयर किया जा रहा है. बट ओरिजिनली ये जो आइकॉन था ये इतना माइल्ड और इतना निष्पाप टाइप कुछ था नहीं, ठीक है. एपिटोम ऑफ लव, और ये वही आइकॉन था, समझ रहे हो, कि जिनका सुन्नत फॉलो होता था जब ये लोग कोट अनकोट जिहाद पे जाते थे.
Amazing,
क्रिश्चियंस
amazing.
लोग
Like,
तो ये
so, I think this is my last point I would be highlighting over here, and maybe if there are other audiences or any questions in the comment section, maybe that could be taken up.
राइट.
But this was something I wanted to show you, Vijitda. So moderator can, if the moderator can look at this. So this is a verse from Bible, very interesting verse. So our Son of God says, basically he meets with couple of fishermen, and audience can read that. In the at last, I guess Jesus says that, what kind of business are you involving yourself in? Come with me, I shall teach you how to fish men. Like how to fish men. Like what kind of scheme is this? I don't understand this. Like, is this supposed to be some high level teaching? It seems to me like
how
someone
to
trying to
how
teach
to
them how
manipulate,
to.
that's the point, right? How to manipulate
Exactly.
humanity.
Like to
मतलब
consider.
these are highly involving intention morality, right? These are expression of intention morals. I'll probably quote it in my book. Yeah, thank you for the reference.
Dada, please quote this. Like,
Hmm.
this is such a disastrous portion of text. Like, nobody
Right,
talks about this. He's
right.
calling human beings as fish
Hmm.
and how to hook them in.
Right.
And after that, we think, okay, why Christians are doing this in India, like behaving like Hindus and all. सीख लो यहाँ पे दिया है. Their original guy has
Right.
taught how to fish you all.
They have manipulated and they have मतलब damaged every natural organic expression of human being. They have either manipulated or they have made advantage of all these things, right? um, सभी इमोशन पे जो पैसा लगाना या इमोशन पे वो बोली लगाना, ये एक्चुअली अब्राहमिज्म ने सिखाया है, स्पेसिफिकली क्रिश्चियनिज्म में. कि कोई पोर को कोई सेवा कर रहा है, उसको उसके रिटर्न में भी कुछ मिल सकता है, ये क्रिश्चियनिज्म का दिया हुआ है.
So
बच्चों का
manipulative.
सेवा
Like,
करो, बच्चों की सेवा के लिए अनाथ आश्रम ये सब खोलो, बट एट द सेम टाइम उन्हें कन्वर्ट तो करना होगा, नहीं तो वो कहाँ जाएंगे, वो हेल में जाएंगे. दिस इज सो वियर्ड, राइट? मतलब एवरी स्पॉन्टेनियस नाइसनेस ऑफ ह्यूमन बीइंग दे हैव वेपनाइज्ड.
माने डूइंग गुड फॉर द सेक ऑफ दैट बीइंग गुड इज नॉट इनफ. लाइक यू हैव
नॉट
टू
इनफ.
हैव, नहीं इसको बदलना है भाई, अपने ग्रुप में लाना है
बदलना है,
यार.
उसको वेपनाइज करना है भाई, उसको वेपनाइज करना है. दैट्स द प्रॉब्लम, हाउ टू
दैट्स सो
मैनिपुलेट.
डेंजरस.
दैट इज सो डेंजरस. It has led to fragmentation of everything, right? इंसान के अंदर से फिर ड्यूटी ही खत्म कर दिया ना फिर.
And they have such commandments, right? Ki, after me, you shall be following, and try to convert others into this group and so on.
Right.
It's continuing still, that very same
And you know,
process.
like,
Okay, so
मतलब वो जो वहाँ का जो कल्चर है ना, वेस्टर्न कल्चर में, इट इज सो कूल. इट्स अ नॉर्मल थिंग टू, मतलब बिफोर ए स्ट्रेंजर इट इज वेरी नॉर्मल टू bring up the issue of that person, of your friend
hmm,
with their parents, कि the kind of issue that I have with my parents. ये हर हर कोई भी दोस्त रहेगा ना, वो बोलेगा पेरेंट्स सो बैड, राइट? व्हाई डू दे डू इट? टू एस्केप देयर ड्यूटीज. इट्स वेरी सिंपल. They just create a narrative. It is always easy to create a narrative. Yeah, we are talking right now, right? If you have that sort of intention, morality, you always create a narrative about me, right? It's very easy. It's not a very difficult thing, but they create that narrative. It is that narrative जो कि यार पेरेंट्स के बारे में गंदा चीजें एक नैरेटिव कर देंगे, और चार पांच लोग, मतलब जितने भी दोस्त हैं ये हैं, उनको बता देंगे कि मेरा बाप कैसा था, और जिनके वजह से मुझे चाइल्डहुड ट्रॉमा मिला, इसीलिए मैंने छोड़ दिया है. एंड इट एक्चुअली कम्स आउट. यू सी कि जितने भी सेलिब्रिटी स्कैंडल वगैरह होता है, सारों में मॉम डैड को कितना, मॉम डैड का भी इंटेंशन मोरालिटी है. सो जब दोनों तरफ से इंटेंशन मोरालिटी है, देन देयर इज नो प्लेस फॉर ट्रस्ट और ऑनर इन एनी रिलेशनशिप. और वो झलकता है
wow.
उनके कल्चर में ये.
So, Dada, then at the very fundamental level of family, they do not have what is called as social capital. Then, मतलब that normal relation ही नहीं है कि
नहीं,
okay,
नॉर्मल
I'm
रिलेशन है ही नहीं. वहां पे भाई पेरेंट्स को ईमेल भेजना होता है आने से पहले. पेरेंट्स ईमेल
wow.
भेजते हैं, फिर बच्चे बोलते हैं अच्छा आ जाओ या नहीं आ जाओ, या फिर मैं बिजी हूँ, नहीं बिजी हूँ. आई एम नॉट
Ah,
किडिंग. आई एम नॉट मेकिंग दिस अप डूड. दिस इज द नॉर्म. दिस इज नॉट, आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि यार मैंने एक दोस्तों से मिला था, वो दोस्त ऐसा कर, नो 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 नो. दिस इज नॉर्म. दिस इज हाउ इट एक्चुअली हैपेंस. दिस इज द कल्चर कि मॉम डैड ईमेल करेंगे, और फिर बच्चा अप्रूव करेगा, फिर वो मॉम डैड आएंगे. दिस इज नॉट स्पेसिफिक टू एनीवन. दिस इज द नॉर्म ऑफ दैट सोसाइटी. ऐसे ही होता है, ये रूल है वहां पे. और
currently
वो
touted
इंटेंशन
as
बोले
the
जितना, हाँ, द मोस्ट
uh,
एडवांस्ड,
yeah, wow.
मोस्ट मॉडर्न एंड
भाई
एडवांस
ऐसे
रिलीजन.
एडवांसमेंट नहीं चाहिए भाई. भाई
या इट किल्स ऑल द स्पॉन्टिनिटी. यार स्पॉन्टिनिटी की जगह इंसान के अंदर नहीं रहेगा, फिर इंसान क्या रहेगा? फिर तो वही एजेंट ही बन जाएगा ना, सब्जेक्ट ही बन जाएगा, कोई ना कोई प्रोपागेंडा,
no
कोई
wonder
भी चीज.
Dada, like no wonder Dada, they have so many recurring ideologies coming up every time because somehow
राइट.
they have to bring back some sort of semblance कि अरे अरे ये तो कहो अरे बाप रे 100 साल हो गए बस डूबना चालू अरे बाप रे.
Yeah, they are so insecure, right? You see this society, right? We call Hindu society ठीक है, डिकेइंग सोसाइटी है, ये वो है, बट उस लेवल का डर नहीं है कि भाई हमें तो बिल्कुल ये नया कोई आइडियोलॉजी लाना होगा, हम तो पागल ही हो रहे हैं, हमारे तो खत्म ही हो जाएगा. ऐसा नहीं है. स्टिल थिंकिंग, वी आर
हाँ
टेकिंग टाइम कि चलो थोड़ा जैसे देखते हैं कि सीताराम गोयल जी ने 40 साल पहले क्या बोला है, या फिर उससे पहले इन्होंने क्या, तिलक ने क्या बोला है, शंकराचार्य तक
हम्म
लेके जाते हैं. देयर इज अ कंटिन्यूटी. लोग कर रहे हैं, जिनको लग रहा है कि इस पे काम करना है तो वो करते हैं, जिनको ऐसा नहीं कि पूरा समाज सोच रहा है हमें एक नया इज्म तो खड़ा करना ही होगा, या तो नहीं तो सड़कों पे जाके सब कुछ तबाह कर देना होगा. We don't feel that much
Completely.
panic.
Yeah, it's like with scientific theory, right? So एक प्रूवन फ्रेमवर्क है, उसमें कुछ भी डालो, like any new subject you can bring into it and you'll get results out of it. तो नया
Right,
सिनेरियो है, हिंदुइज्म के फ्रेमवर्क पे डालो, न्यू
right.
न्यू सॉल्यूशंस विल कम अप.
Exactly, exactly.
पर they have to create new frameworks every time कि अरे अरे ये तो खराब हो गया है, फिर से नया लाओ, फिर से नया लाओ.
Right.
अरे यार,
उसी हिसाब से फिर हम लोग जब कास्टिज्म और सनातन जब एक साथ डिस्कस करते, कास्टिज्म कैन नॉट बी सनातन. कास्टिज्म अगर इस हिसाब से बोल रहे हो कि बर्थ बेस्ड अगर कुछ चीज है, तो फिर यार फिर जो बर्थ है उसका डेथ भी है. तो ऑब्वियसली मतलब जिस चीज का मतलब जो माया है बेसिकली, जिसका भूतलोक में एग्जिस्टेंस है, वो कैसे सनातन का पार्ट हो सकता है. तो आई थिंक हमें इस हिसाब से फिर कास्टिज्म को देखना चाहिए कि इट इज पार्ट ऑफ माया, इट इज नॉट एनीथिंग इटर्नल. बिकॉज आप जैसे बोलते हो कि ये बर्थ बेस्ड है, तो बर्थ बेस्ड कोई भी चीज अगर होता है उसका डेथ भी होता है, तो दैट कैन नॉट बी पार्ट ऑफ सनातन.
रेसिज्म को लेके इनके आए अब भी चल रहा है. With every new framework that they come up, still they get to that same very damn thing. हटता
राइट.
ही नहीं है कभी. अजीब सा है. By the way, for audience and for everyone speaking, all of this content is done for academic, like from the standpoint of academic research, basically you can say, and we are not like railing down upon any religion and all. Freedom of religion, we respect it, and whatever we are doing, it's under Constitution of India, so please don't get enraged over it. It's a normal content. एकेडमिक तरीके से देखो आप लोग. इतना ही बोलना था. Cause दादा, we don't know, someone might get too salty over it, so इसलिए disclaimer दे दी. आप जो
No,
बोलते
what we
हो.
are discussing, I think we are not using any rhetoric or anything.
Yeah.
जो आपको दिखेगा कोई मौलाना वाला कोई लेक्चर होता है या अरे यार अभी आई डोंट नो, एक एक तो वीडियो आया था, एक यूएस का एक कोई तो पास्टर है ना, ऑयल को लेके वो बाइबल का वो वर्ड्स है और ऑयल को उसने कुछ मिक्स कर दिया, पंच कर दिया. हाँ.
वाओ.
आई आई सेंड यू द वीडियो, ठीक है. और वहां से फिर वो
ओके ओके.
जस्टिफाई कर रहा है कि बाइबल अप्रूव करता है वेनेजुएला वेनेजुएला को अटैक करना. लाइक व्हाट द हेक इज गोइंग ऑन डूड. मतलब मतलब किसकी ले रहे हो, वेनेजुएला की या अपनी बाइबल की?
Like they took the title of Christ from so-called anointing, right? तो Christ मतलब anointing ही
Right.
होता है ना रोमन भाषा में. So that's like oiling
Christian.
the guy like
I think
before.
it happened the either way. मतलब it happened the other way कि क्राइस्ट से क्रिश्चियनिंग हो गया ना. I don't know.
अच्छा 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 अच्छा. ओ ओके ओके ओके. Cause मैंने सोचा था वो मतलब जीसस को क्राइस्ट बुलाते थे cause he was like king of the world या क्या. अब भी चलता है ना, वो बोलते
Right.
क्राइस्ट इज किंग या क्या कुछ स्लोगन देते रहते. मैंने देखा है. सो like are they
Right.
taking
Right.
that anointing whole ritual of oiling a guy with Venezuela? Like seriously?
I think so. I
Seriously?
think
How
so.
much of it?
No, it was more
So
weird than that. So I'll send you the video. Then we can discuss actually कि क्या है ये actually. But we need to discuss that one.
I like, I will not name the country, but in a country there were billboards of Mr. Trump being touted as the Solomon. No, not Solomon. Sorry, mistake. Not Solomon.
हाँ
Cyrus the
हाँ हाँ.
Great. Right.
Right.
Apparently, he's the
Right.
so-called friend of Christians and all. But now
Right.
it's turning out to be the other way. Like he is the Christ, the new Christ. The old
He's a
Christ,
new Christ, right?
orange Christ.
No, the new Christ is this guy, Charlie Kirk, right? Trump is basically the
Oh,
God.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure, sure, sure. Brilliant, brilliant
Trump
point.
has
Yeah, Tucker
Trump
Carlson
has
said it.
all the quality of a Abrahamic God. All the qualities.
Ah, amazing. He's the father.
Right, right. He's the father. He is enraged. He is a
Yep.
bit वही जो बोलते हैं दुष्चरित्र टाइप है. He's a little bit of that. He has no remorse and he will burn you in hell. He will deliver justice. So Trump has all the quality of a Abrahamic God. Charlie Kirk has the quality of this, and I'm pretty sure Erika Kirk also understand her position.
Oh no. Oh no. No, no. उतना दूर नहीं जाएंगे.
And
That's
she's literally
किसी ने अगर
so
डांट.
she's just making fun of herself, right? I mean, just the way she's selling herself,
Oh yeah.
it's very
Like,
evident. It's very evident.
also, she has some doctorate or some, no, I think a degree on Christian leadership, if I am correct. Erika
I don't
Kirk.
know.
Uh,
Acha.
yeah, she from some Christian institution she has taken that. So yeah,
Grieving widow. Grieving widow. And just
grief.
check the grief, right? I mean, how the so everything is subverted, right? In Abrahamism, this widow is grieving, and look at the way she grieves, right? It's very much Christian. It
Yeah,
is very
grieving
much
widow
Christian.
goes to, yeah, grieving widow goes to for award functions wearing some
The
expensive
tights,
dress and all.
these things, yeah,
Yeah,
this
and
glittering
whenever she,
tight dress as a widow,
yeah, yeah.
and she dances
Oh
and
my God.
every whatever. So because subverted, right? You have to see the subversion. You see the subversion.
So
That's what I'm
barefaced.
telling you guys. I think मतलब मेरे मैं तो एक ही हाथ से लिखता हूँ यार, ज्यादा लिख नहीं पाता हूँ. So you guys should also start
Yeah, yeah,
writing these things, like these observations. You guys have to put it in a book.
completely.
Abrahamic
Completely.
subversion, everything is subverted यार. जब लोगों को दिखाना चालू करोगे ना, तब लोगों को रियलिटी पता चलेगा. अच्छा, रियलिटी ऐसा लगता है. जस्ट इमेजिन, मतलब
Yeah.
ये सारे इमोशंस को ये लोग सबवर्ट कर दिए हैं. लव, हेट्रेड, ड्यूटी, मतलब जो भी तुम्हारा टास्क है या एक्शन है या तुम्हारे इमोशन है, सारा सबवर्टेड है. ठीक है.
Okay, what's with the hate with honor that they have? Honor को बहुत hate करते हैं. Like I've seen
हाँ,
this.
राइट,
You can explain.
राइट, बिकॉज ऑनर टेक्स यू टू भूमा, राइट. इट if it grows within you, then you would not bow down to the god, to their god. तो फिर कंट्रोल करना
Hmm.
मुश्किल होता है. तो ऑनर को तो पहले मारते हैं ये लोग. That's a very the basic distinction, right? Honor in a Hindu society versus this society. So I'm telling you a story,
Hmm.
right? He
Okay.
I think I read it from Jahangir Nama, but not directly from Jahangir Nama. I think Dr. A.L. Srivastav is a historian.
Okay.
Sam Srivastav, A.L. Srivastav. So he is a very famous historian. So Professor
अच्छा, अच्छा.
Srivastav is actually quoting Jahangir Nama, where he is saying कि जहांगीर ने ये बोला था कि अपने मुगल जो आर्मी थे, सोल्जर्स थे, उनको बोले थे कि
Hmm.
डू नॉट गेज ऑन पुट योर गेज ऑन हिंदू वुमेन. मतलब अगर तुम सड़कों से
Hmm.
मार्केट से जा रहे हो एज ए सोल्जर, अगर उधर से हिंदू लड़की आ रही है, हिंदू नारी आ रही है, तो उसमें नजर मत डालना, क्योंकि या तो वो खुद को मार लेगी, खत्म कर लेगी, या तुम्हें खत्म कर देगी, और इससे फिर दंगा फैलेगा. So just imagine in this land, right? कि मुगलों के अंडर आ चुका है. ठीक है. द होल रेस इज सॉर्ट ऑफ जिनको जिनको बेसिकली रूल किया जा रहा है. ठीक है, कॉलोनाइज कर दिया गया है. इवन देन उनका जो सोल्जर है, राइट, वो एक हिंदू लड़की की तरफ आंख उठा के नहीं देख सकता. दैट वाज द डिग्निटी ऑफ दिस दैट वाज देयर इन द सोसाइटी, राइट. जिसको जिसको खत्म किया गया है ग्रेजुअली. इस सोसाइटी से ऑनर को खत्म कर दिया
Example.
गया. जब तक ऑनर
हाँ,
नहीं आएगा तब
एग्जाम्पल्स
तक
हैं।
सारे ड्यूटी तुम, ड्यूटी से ऑनर चला गया फिर वो इंटेंशनल मोरालिटी के जब्त में गिरफ्त में आ जाएगा. Duty without honor is
ओह,
what? It's absolute bogus thing. It's a subverted thing. तुम्हारे
या,
अंदर से ऑनर निकल गया फिर ड्यूटी का सेंस भी नहीं रहेगा, या फिर वो उसी जगह पे आ जाएगा, वो भी अब्रामाइज्ड हो जाएगा ड्यूटी, जो हो रहा है, जो
हाँ,
हमें
कोई
दिख रहा है.
इंसेंटिव रहेगा। हम्म, हम्म,
हाँ, अपनी सोसाइटी में
पीछे कोई
होते हुए
इंसेंटिव
दिख रहा
रहेगा।
है. राइट.
माय गॉड, लाइक दिस
हाँ,
एग्जांपल इज सो सो ब्रूटल कि
सो
एक
ब्रूटल.
एम्पेरर को बोलना पड़ रहा है, आंख आंख मत
आग उड़ाना पड़
डालो
रहा
उन
है.
पे।
एग्जैक्टली. एग्जैक्टली.
ओह,
यू सी द, मतलब रोंगटे खड़े हो जाते हैं.
देयर इज आल्सो एग्जांपल राइट कि वो जो हाडी रानी की कहानी है ना, मेवाड़ की रानी, आई डोंट नो व्हिच रानी, लाइक द राणा हैज टू गो टू फाइट वॉर, पर वो जा नहीं रहा है बिकॉज ही इज जस्ट न्यूली वेड एंड ही इज लाइक ट्रेमेंडसली इन लव विथ हिज क्वीन, एंड द क्वीन
राइट.
सीज दैट कि अरे ये लाइक द एनिमीज, लाइक the Islamic Turks are there and he is getting infatuated with me. She cuts
राइट.
off her head and gives that as a gift to
राइट.
that king.
यस. यस.
Ooh,
That example is there. Brutal examples in
कि
brutal times. In brutal example in
yeah,
brutal times. और इसीलिए पहले इसी जो ये सब जो जो सैक्रिफाइसेस है उसको पहले स्मार्च किया गया. ये जो भी
yeah,
उस टाइम पे जो भी जौहर और साका हुआ था, पहले उन पे काली डाला गया. यू सी.
exactly.
क्योंकि इनको ऑनर समझ में नहीं आता है. ऑनर जिसको समझ में नहीं आएगा फिर पहले जिसके पास ऑनर है उसको खत्म करेगा ना वो. फिर
Completely.
वही किया गया.
Supposed academics like speak so disgusting stuff on Twitter and all. इस
राइट.
जौहर को लेके will not
एग्जैक्टली यार.
repeat that.
मतलब और ये हमारे लॉ में आ जाना चाहिए कि क्योंकि इसी दैट्स द पॉइंट. मतलब आज जैसे हमने डिस्कस किया, विदाउट ऑनर यू कैन नॉट डिफेंड मोरल फ्रेमवर्क यार.
Hmm,
राइट. इट इज द ऑनर दैट इज डिफेंडिंग दिस मोरालिटी इन योर क्रिएटिविटी. उसमें ऑनर नहीं रहेगा फिर वो
completely.
नथिंग, वो निहिलिज्म में गिरेगा यार वो जाके.
Hmm,
ऑनर के थ्रू और रही के
absolutely.
थ्रू ही यू आर एक्चुअली गोइंग अवे फ्रॉम दैट नथिंगनेस. ऑनर जब मिट जाएगा, दिस द वेरी बेसिक ऑफ दिस हिंदू मोरल फ्रेमवर्क और नेचुरल, एनी नेचुरल मोरल फ्रेमवर्क. उसको तुम अगर नेचुरल मोरालिटी क्रिएट करना चाहते हो उसमें तुम्हें एक फंडामेंटल एजेंट की तरह ऑनर को रखना ही होगा. नहीं तो तुम किसी ना किसी के आगे झुको, तुम भगवान के आगे सर नीचा कर दोगे, उसके आगे सर नीचा करोगे, जेन्युइननेस नहीं आएगा चीजों में, इंटेंशनल मोरालिटी के गिरफ्त में आ जाओगे. ऑनर इज द वन ऑफ द मोस्ट फंडामेंटल. ये रही जो है वो तो नॉन डुअल है ना. ऑनर इज समथिंग जो, जिसे बोलते हैं कि स्पॉन्टेनियस ब्रेकिंग ऑफ द सिमेट्री. जो बिल्कुल ही निर्गुण वाला जो सिमेट्री है उससे जब थोड़ा सा डिजेनरेसी जब ब्रेक हो रहा है, जो सिमेट्री जो ब्रेक हो रहा है, उस लेवल पे ऑनर आता है. ऑनर इज नॉट निर्गुण थिंग, बट इट इज द मोस्ट फंडामेंटल गुण. ठीक है. which upon which the whole moral framework rest upon. ठीक है.
Hmm.
अगर
Well,
and it is not निर्गुण. honor is a गुण भाई. it lives
yeah,
in
yeah,
this dual physical world. लेकिन वो बहुत
absolutely.
इंपॉर्टेंट है.
मूल्यबोध है। हाँ,
हाँ,
मूल्यबोध है इसलिए आत्मसम्मान है, तो आत्मसम्मान नहीं
बिल्कुल.
रहेगा तो काय का
बिल्कुल.
मूल्य फिर, छोड़ दो
एग्जैक्टली.
सभी।
हाँ.
एवरीथिंग इज ट्रांजैक्शन, फिर जो फायदे में आता है
राइट.
वही करो, फिर कोई नहीं।
राइट. और ऑनर 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 भी वही ईगो के लेवल पे है ये चीज. ऐसा नहीं है कि ऑनर ईगो के बियॉन्ड है, बट इट लिव्स इन द सेम लेवल ऑफ फिजिकलिटी एज ईगो. बट ये
या,
जरूरी है अगर तुम मोरल फ्रेमवर्क सोसाइटी में क्रिएट करना चाहते हो. विदाउट ऑनर इट इज इम्पॉसिबल एक्चुअली. यू कैन
लाइक
क्रिएट इट बट it will create a society of isolated agents basically.
एंड दादा ऑनर के साथ ये भी है ना कि लाइक ऑनर मेक्स यू समथिंग मोर देन जस्ट अ ह्यूमन. मैंने देखा है लाइक इट टेक्स यू टू सच अ लेवल लाइक यू आप अपने फ्रेम से बाहर निकल गए हो. लाइक इन केस ऑफ इवन
राइट
जापानीज samurais we see this, in case of our own people we see this so much.
राइट
The whole idea to give up your life for some higher cause, क्योंकि उसमें आत्मसम्मान है कि I am
राइट
raising above everything that is mundane and gross and easily achievable. उससे मैं उठ
राइट
के मैं कर रहा हूँ
वो तो
काम.
एक डायरेक्शन है, वो तो एक डायरेक्शन है। दूसरा डायरेक्शन ये हो सकता है ना कि युद्ध में जिसके पास ये नहीं है, अस्त्र नहीं है, उसको नहीं मारेंगे, या युद्ध में कोई बच्चे को
Yeah,
नहीं मारेंगे, कोई लड़की को स्लेव नहीं बनाएंगे, है ना।
yeah.
ये सारे ऑनर से आते हैं। द मोमेंट यू लूज इट, यू लूज ऑनर, यू लूज इट ऑल, यू लूज नेचुरल मोरालिटी। अगर एक बाघ का, शेर का बच्चा भी होता है, वो भी अगर कोई, वो कोई मरा हुआ ये खाता नहीं है, वो हंट करके खाता है। दैट इज हिज ऑनर,
Yeah, yeah,
यू
yeah,
नो।
absolutely, absolutely.
हाँ, वैसा दीदी वही कह रहे हैं कि ऑनर, ऑनर इज द फाउंडेशन ऑफ दिस सेंस ऑफ ड्यूटी। ऑनर के बिना ड्यूटी आ ही नहीं सकता। देयर विल ऑलवेज बी सम वे टू ब्लेम पीपल, यू नो,
Mm,
लाइक
mm,
मेरे पापा ने ये नहीं किया मेरे लिए, या फिर मेरा जो पार्टनर है वो ये नहीं किया, या फिर मेरी पार्टनर वो कर दिया, या फिर दोस्त ने, मेरा दोस्त तो कमीना इंसान है। ठीक है, कमीना बोल सकते हो, बट वो लोग कमीना होते ही है, बट अगर उसको इंटरनलाइज कर लिया तुमने फिर दिक्कत हो जाता है। फिर यू आर फ्रेमिंग, यू आर क्रिएटिंग द फ्रेमवर्क जहाँ पे वो उधर है, ठीक है, इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ हिज गुडविल एंड एवरीथिंग। तो
completely,
ऑनर,
completely.
ऑनर के बिना यू कैनॉट वही, इसीलिए मैंने ऑनर रखा है उस जगह पे कि ठीक है, द आर्ट्स टू क्रिएटिविटी टू एस्केप फ्रॉम द नथिंगनेस। फिर जो क्रिएटिविटी है, इट हैज टू बी वीव्ड इन, मतलब उस वहाँ मीनिंग चाहिए, मीनिंग के लिए, मीनिंग तो क्रिएटिविटी से आएगा, स्पॉन्टेनियस फायर है।
Mm,
और उसके बाद जब मैं इसको फिजिकल वर्ल्ड में ला रहा हूँ, राइट, वो ऑनर के हाथ पकड़ के ही मैं ला रहा हूँ ये सब चीजें। जो भी मैं एक्सप्लेन किया, ये जो मोरल फ्रेमवर्क, वो ऑनर के हाथ पकड़ के मैंने, द ऑनर गिव बर्थ टू दीज थिंग्स, राइट, इन दिस डुअल वर्ल्ड। इसीलिए मैंने ऑनर को उस जगह
mm.
पे रखा कि चलो, स्पॉन्टेनियस मोरल पे भी ऑनर का एक जगह है, क्योंकि उसके
Yeah,
थ्रू जब
that's
काम करना चाहते हो, यू हैव अ स्पॉन्टेनियस मोरालिटी, बट उसके साथ ऑनर को मिक्स करना ही पड़ेगा टू 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 डू मोरल एक्शन एक्चुअली इन दिस वर्ल्ड।
yeah. ऑनर ऑनर के वजह से ही तो स्वराज का कॉन्सेप्ट आता है. लाइक
राइट
दैट होल कि आई शैल बी रूल्ड बाय लाइक बाय माई सेल्फ, लाइक शुड आई कैसे इसे इंटरप्रेट करना है. दिस इज सच अ बिग टर्म, लाइक स्वराज का जो टर्म है. बट
राइट राइट
नॉट गेटिंग टू पॉलिटिकल connotations, but still, yeah, it's through
यस
honor.
एग्जैक्टली।
honor
अगर
है
अगर
कि
भगवान
I
भी
will
है,
not be ruled by someone else.
हाँ, वही तो, वही मैंने एक सेंटेंस बोला, अगर भगवान भी है, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू बाउ डाउन, मतलब मैं प्राइड के साथ खड़ा रहूंगा एज दैट प्राउड नाइट ऑफ दैट भगवान, राइट। मुझे सर झुका के बिल्कुल ही, मतलब सबसर्विएंट बन जाने की जरूरत नहीं है। इट हैज टू, दैट रिस्पेक्ट फॉर गॉड हैज टू कम फ्रॉम द सेंस ऑफ ऑनर एंड नॉट फ्रॉम द सेंस ऑफ फियर और सेंस ऑफ सबसर्वियंस और एनीथिंग, राइट। मतलब
हम्म.
डर से
मतलब
पूजा
अपने
नहीं
यहाँ भी
करेंगे।
मतलब अपने यहाँ भी योद्धा सर झुकाते हैं. लाइक इट इज टू शो ऑनर टू
एग्जैक्टली,
समवन अंडर whom you
इट्स एन ऑनर
refuge. वो
कल्चर,
भी
राइट, इट्स एन
ऑनर
ऑनर कल्चर।
कल्चर एकदम.
यस,
ये मतलब मैं डिफीटेड हूँ, मैं सिंफुल हूँ, मुझसे कुछ नहीं होने वाला, आई एम
राइट,
क्रिमिनल ऑल माई लाइफ, मैं तो पाप करता ही रहता हूँ.
हाँ,
दिस
मरने के
दिस
बाद
सो
क्या होगा इसलिए मैं
डिस्गस्टिंग.
झुक रहा हूँ, राइट, दैट इज डिस्कस्टिंग।
Yeah, completely. I think स्वामी विवेकानंद प्रिटी स्वामी विवेकानंद क्यों, हर कोई मतलब they were always blaring about this कि अरे ये mentality मत
Right.
लाओ अपने में, like this sort of sinful and all.
And also to tell you, मतलब इस context में you can ask me, यार, then what are the other sort of gun, right? And that I think कि यार these are fundamentals. Now, as per me, the easiest form of spontaneous morality is gratitude, and easiest form of intention morality is platitude. प्लेटिट्यूड मतलब जो चीजें इतना बार बार बोलो कि वो यूजलेस हो जाए, ठीक है
Hmm.
कि
Completely.
राइट. तो ग्रेटिट्यूड इज समथिंग व्हिच इज द इजीएस्ट फॉर्म ऑफ spontaneous morality. Honor is difference between just freedom and independence, right? On responsibility, it is the right on duty, right, right,
Brilliant
right.
point.
हाँ. तो ग्रेटिट्यूड ऐसी चीज है ना which actually दुनिया का मतलब changes your own perspective on everything. And gratitude is something, जैसे for example, if let's say someone is poor, ठीक है, someone is
Hmm.
poor versus someone is very rich. वही बंदा, मान लो एक पुअर बंदा था, उसको पैसा मिल गया एंड देन वो रिच हो गया, ठीक है. तो वहां पे
Hmm.
काफी सारे जो मोरल फ्रेमवर्क में काफी सारे चेंजेस लाना पड़ता है, राइट.
Indeed.
बट
Hmm.
बट अगर वो, if he or she is, let's say, has some sort of gratitude, वो फिर पास ऑन होता है. एंड ग्रेटिट्यूड इज समथिंग ना जो डिपेंड नहीं करता किससे बात कर रहे हो, मंत्री जी से बात कर रहे हो या फिर एक वेटर से बात कर रहे हो या टीचर से बात कर रहे हो. इट इज एन स्पॉन्टेनियस इमोशन विच यू कैन शो एंड एक्सप्रेस टू एवरीवन, एटलीस्ट फील अबाउट
Yes.
इट. बाकी सारी
Hmm.
चीज नहीं होता है, अलग अलग लोगों के साथ अलग अलग तरह से बिहेव करते हो, उसके हिसाब से फिर तुम्हारा जो इमोशन है ना, तुम्हारा जो मोरालिटी, एटलीस्ट द वे यू वांट टू रिएक्ट, वो चेंज होता रहता है,
Hmm.
राइट. कि मैं अगर पीएचडी में थीसिस
Yep.
डिफेंस कर रहा हूँ इन फ्रंट ऑफ 5 प्रोफेसर्स, आई हैव टू बी टफ. मैं अगर उनको
Yep.
बिल्कुल ही कोक्सिंग कैजुअलिंग कोक्सिंग बातें करने लगे, सर आप तो बहुत बढ़िया हो जाए, फिर वो डिग्री नहीं देगा मुझे, ठीक है. अगेंस्ट
Yeah. Yeah.
दूसरा अगर कॉर्पोरेट फ्रेमवर्क में है, वहां पे मुझे थोड़ा बैलेंस रखना होगा.
Hmm.
आई कैन नॉट बी टफ टू कि जिनको मैनेज कर रहा हूँ बहुत ज्यादा टफ हो गया कि आई एम एक्सपेक्टिंग दैट. काफी लोग कर देते हैं, मैं पीएचडी में तो इतना स्टैंडर्ड था, कॉर्पोरेट में क्यों ना करूँ. बट अगेन यू आर डूइंग अ मिस्टेक, राइट, कि वहां से लाके इधर प्रोजेक्ट कर रहे हो. बट
Yeah.
ग्रेटिट्यूड इज समथिंग जो तुम थीसिस डिफेंस में टफ होके भी एडवाइजर को दिखा सकते हो. ग्रेटिट्यूड इज समथिंग जो पार्टनर को दिखा सकते हो, मॉम डैड को दिखा सकते हो, अपने घर वाले को दिखा सकते हो, दोस्तों को दिखा सकते हो, वेटर को दिखा सकते हो. So it is such a easy and such universal sort of spontaneous morality ना, moral value
Hmm.
जो
Hmm.
जो रखना चाहिए. मतलब honor, gratitude, ये these are basic sort of fundamentals of any moral framework, मुझे लगता है ये.
Yeah. But recognition of self-worth and gratitude उससे भी आता है कि
हाँ,
uh,
recognition
the
of the others basically, हाँ, of their
yeah,
work.
yeah, others.
True, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a nice
absolutely.
interpretation. Without honor, what occurs is a Neta's state of decadence, artificial quasi stable state, right? It is spirals gets out of control. Exactly.
Hmm.
ऑनर के बिना
Hmm.
तो कोई कल्चर चल ही नहीं सकता, कोई भी
Yeah,
कल्चर नहीं चल.
and they hit at honor culture. उसको use
Right.
करके they hit at us.
Exactly. How they damaged on this everything, yeah, everything by hitting our honor. They hit our honor ना basically. इतना ज्यादा प्रोपेगेंडा दिखाने की जरूरत क्या है.
Yeah, like there might be problems in any system of jurisprudence. मैं खाप पंचायत की बात कर रहा हूँ. But to
Exactly.
hit them
Right.
saying कि अरे ऑनर कल्चर है उनको, अरे सामाजिक व्यवस्था है तो समाज को देख के कुछ अगर मतलब प्रेस्क्रिप्शंस दे भी दिए, why are you hitting at
Right.
honor culture? What the hell?
खाप पंचायत तो मैं मानता हूँ, खाप पंचायत को वापस लाना होगा. मे बी वहां पे जो बैठते हैं उनको, उनका जो राय है या जो भी है उसको रिकॉर्ड किया जाएगा. ये एक व्यवस्था होनी चाहिए कि इट विल बी इन रिटन रिकॉर्ड कि भाई उन्होंने क्या राय दिया है. ऑब्वियसली प्रोसिक्यूशन करने का राइट उन पे नहीं दिया जाएगा। जो बेसिक जो भी झगड़ा होता है गांव का, छोटा मोटा कोई परिवार का विवाद, वो सुलझाने का। अगर ठीक है तुम खाप की
एग्जैक्टली।
बात नहीं मान रहे हो तो ठीक है, तुम जज के पास जाओ, अपने डिस्ट्रिक्ट जो भी है उस कोर्ट में जाओ। पहला स्टेप है कि डिस्ट्रिक्ट जो कोर्ट है वो पूछेगा कि खाप का क्या राय था इसमें।
एग्जैक्टली।
तो ये रहना चाहिए, ये मुझे लगता है कि इसको वापस लाना चाहिए। खाप हट गया, फिर ये जो कॉन्वर्शन वगैरह है ना, इसका रास्ता खुल गया है अभी। खाप को इसीलिए इन्होंने हटाया कि ताकि कॉन्वर्शन का ये रास्ता खुल जाए।
Completely. They are harming at every single non मैनेजेबल सोसाइटल इंस्टीट्यूशंस। कोई भी इंस्टीट्यूशन जिसपे मतलब एक्सेस नहीं है इनका, दे विल हार्म एट इट कि इसको बंद करो। ये क्या हो रहा है? टेम्पल्स को तो ऐसे ही लिया है, लाइक टेम्पल्स आर
राइट,
टेकन ओवर बाय द वेरी लार्ज लेवल।
एग्जैक्टली।
Okay, I don't know if any good comments are there, then
Voishalidhi want to
maybe
join?
what of one.
Voishalidhi is want to join
हाँ, if
the
she can join.
stream? Voishalidhi? I don't know. Did she respond?
Yeah, she wrote about 4 minutes
Voishalidhi, you
before.
want to join?
4 seconds, sorry, 4 seconds.
You're right. Even animals have that sense of honor. Exactly. It comes from the idea of dharma. Without honor, there is no dharma. Probably, yeah, she won't join. I'm not sure. ठीक है, इसको 3 घंटे के नीचे ही
हाँ,
रखते हैं। आई थिंक उस हिसाब से
yeah, okay, okay, fine.
कैटेगराइजेशन होता है। तो अभी हम
Yep,
लोग क्लोज
maybe,
करते हैं, और हम लोग
yeah,
अगले
absolutely.
एपिसोड में इसको ही कंटिन्यू करेंगे। बहुत सारा चीजें रह गया है अभी। इंटेंशन, मोरालिटी और
Yeah.
एक्सटेंसिव डिस्कस करेंगे, और अब्राहमिक पैराडॉक्सेस हैं, धर्मा कर्मा डिस्कस करेंगे। जिस हिसाब से मैं इस फ्रेमवर्क को देख रहा हूँ, इन लोगों को एक क्वेश्चन रहता है ना यार, कर्मा द वर्ल्ड सीम सो स्पोरेडिक, फिर निष्काम कर्मा का एक जगह तो है, बट ओवरऑल व्हाट इज कर्मा। तो ये मतलब हाउ टू सी कर्मा एज अ कॉजलिटी, इसको मैं कवर करूंगा।
Yep, 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 yep.
कि हाँ, कि जो
Deeper
स्पॉन्टेनियस
topics.
मोरालिटी वाला पार्ट है उससे जो जनरेट होता है वो थोड़ा स्टोकेस्टिक हो सकता है, बट बायस जो आता है
Mm-hmm.
वो इंटेंशन मोरालिटी से आता है। तो इंटेंशन मोरालिटी के से अगर चीजें करोगे तो उसका छाप जो रह जाएगा तुम्हारे कर्म में, तुम्हारा प्रोडक्ट में, वो कर्म है बेसिकली। विच मीन कि अगर
True.
if you are creating something out of hatred, that product itself will have that छाप, that trace of
Mm.
hatred. तो
Yeah,
इंटेंशन मोरालिटी का जो छाप रह जाता है चीजों में, टास्क में, उससे मैं कर्मा कहूंगा।
mm.
तो इस हिसाब से मैं चीजों को डिफाइन करूंगा। तो फिर बैठते हैं,
Brilliant.
मैं मंडे
Yep.
या ट्यूसडे वापस आ जाऊंगा, फिर बैठेंगे फिर मस्त।
Fine, 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 fine.
चलो।
So, audience, please comment and share this stream, and we'll be back
Hold,
with
hold.
the
I
next
think
session.
Vaishali will join. So
हाँ,
let's
भूषण
just
इज
wait.
ज्वाइनिंग।
Oh, okay, okay.
And for the audience, if any one of you want any of the documents or the reference, kindly comment. We will provide it to you, or you can mail it to us also.
राइट, मुझे 1 सेकंड देना, मैं इधर ही हूँ।
Okay.
आज तो भूपेंद्र उधर से पॉडकास्ट किया ना कुछ. भूपेंद्र is having a good time there in
Yeah, yeah.
कोयम्बटूर.
Coimbatore. Yeah.
हाँ लेकिन थोड़ा नेटवर्क खराब है शायद. बट मस्त. आज तो अपना
Yeah,
ममता
Boshalidi.
ममता दी का भी कांड हुआ.
Yeah. So, Boshalidi, go to their membership tab on the channel now, Vimarsh, and there you shall find the streaming, the link to join in this stream. आप देखो जाके वहां पे मिल जाएगा आपको मेंबरशिप पोस्ट्स में कम्युनिटी टैब्स के बाद में ही है.
Boishali has joined before, so she will know probably.
हाँ हाँ ना शी इज आस्किंग हाउ टू जॉइन ऑन
अच्छा
कमेंट्स
अच्छा.
मैंने देखा.
कौन है क्या?
हाँ शी इज जॉइन. ओके. नमस्कार वैशाली जी.
हेलो वैशाली जी,
Hi,
नमस्कार.
hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, you're very right about this idea of honor. This idea of honor is very normal and natural in nature also. If you look at processes, if you just look at, Newton's third law, I mean, the stability of you walking comes because not only you're putting a forward thrust, but also because you have um, a backward thrust on you being put by friction. You have
Mhm.
your weight weighing down on the ground, but you also have the idea of the normal force thrusting on you, like there's a
Right.
normal force on you. So every if you look at chemical equilibrium, in a chemical equilibrium, chemistry equilibrium happens, and it's basically equilibriums that are exploited in the industry, that you move in this particular direction, you appear
Like trusting the honor of the process, right?
yes, you are
Right.
you're it is the honor of the process, that you're honoring thermodynamics and energetics that leads to that equilibrium. And
Right.
unless that happens, it generally, what happens, it cascades in a certain direction. It keeps
Right.
cascading. For example, if you add a plus b is equal to c plus d, and if c is like a precipitate, it comes out of the system with zero ion, with like zero solubility product, 100% like ionic product, then a plus b will never be in equilibrium with c and d. C will
Right.
completely keep crashing out of the system, and it'll keep moving in one direction. And unfortunately, what happens is, it's like this utlo bai to kotok jai kind of a tendency of these non-dharmic ideas that kind of leads to uh, today what you see in the Western society, this excessive wokeism, etc., etc. It is because they don't understand the idea of balance. They don't understand the
Right.
idea of dharma. No, you look at the Indic philosophies. Okay, when you're talking about genders, recognition of genders, and etc., etc., you have the idea of you go to Kumbh Mela, you have the Kinnar Akhada, which
Hmm.
basically literally honors, gives religious honor to
Right.
people who identify as the third gender. But that doesn't mean that you push the idea of genderism in a society where a child is given. I mean, imagine how unscientific this is, that doctors are not opening their mouths against the idea of pushing chemical hormone mimics into a child before the child is hitting puberty. How
Right.
much that does, what that will do to your body, as what that will do to that child's body, because the child's body will never be able to equilibrate itself with the high dosage of chemical mimics that are coming from outside in those injections, right? And no matter what happens, a man who's born a man without those organs that produce, say, estrogen, you will never be able to produce the estrogen that is needed
Right.
to be a woman, right? You will forever have to stay on an estrogen patch, and that is not normal to your body. It's only pushing your body in a certain direction. It is never allowing your body to attain that dynamically shifting stages of equilibrium, because what you're doing is, every day you're in equilibrium. Your equilibrium is shifting as you age, but you are supposed to remain every day in a dynamic stage of equilibrium. So
Right.
everything, I mean, today you look at our Ayurveda. I honestly, to tell you the truth, most Ayurvedic doctors don't understand the idea of Ayurveda at all.
Hmm.
Their understanding of Ayurveda is ye khane se ye hota hai, ye khane se. So there's like a one is to one symptom and edible object correlation. That is not Ayurveda.
Right.
Ayurveda is basically trying to achieve a certain balance for your body to the best of your nature and what can be put inside your body to give you the best possible results at every point in time. That
Right.
includes lifestyle. If Ayurveda tells you that you should not eat XYZ foods because then this medicines will not work, then you should not eat those XYZ foods. Unfortunately, these concepts today, we are our even our concepts have been corrupted completely. But this idea of honor, it is a very natural thing in the universe, because without this idea of honoring natural laws, you cannot achieve
Right.
an equilibrium in anything, not in science, not in your body,
Rosalie,
not in your mind.
this is the way you have described this process na, like poetically, this function of nature through honor. मेरे से फिर मेरे दिमाग में एक अच्छा आइडिया आया, which is that it is the honor that is actually getting us rid of any external agent like God in the natural functioning. So for example, the way you have explained कि ठीक है, we are walking and the bhumi itself has an honor, so it is sort of way, in a way it is pushing us, right? It is imparting that normal force due to which we are being able to walk. So I am imparting some force. Is a normal force which is coming from quote unquote the honor of this bhumi, which is basically reaching an equilibrium, right? And I can walk. Now same is going with the chemical processes, chemical equilibrium, right? Here the point is, and similar way for the society as well, because I have some honor, you have a sense of honor, and through this sense of honor we are creating this interaction and conversation, right? So when you try to build a society based on honor, you don't need that external agent.
No, you don't actually. This is the
But
whole
the
idea.
moment when you try to talk about rights, कि I have these list, I have this list of rights, you have that list of rights. Now we are going to collide with this list of rights. So for the assignment of right, you need that some external agent,
Exactly.
so-called the
You need a
state.
middleman. You don't need
You
a
need a
middleman.
middleman.
You don't need a middleman. In
When you are basing the society on honor, you don't need a middleman or an
right,
external state.
it's a
But
foundation of
here
dharma.
you need a middleman. Right,
So
right,
the
right.
whole idea here is that, when you're saying dharma, you're actually exactly utilizing the example of dharitri, right? Dharayati iti
Right.
dharma, right? It is exactly the word also is derived from dharitri, like
Dhri, right?
three,
Dhri
three,
se aaya hai.
three
Right.
se aaya hai. And here, see, you in an honor based idea, in an honor based existence, independence is the crux. Independence
Hmm.
is basically the freedom to take your responsibility. Independence
Right.
is not just আমি যা ইচ্ছে তাই করবো. When I have the
Right.
freedom to uproot trees planted by the government, that is not freedom. I have the freedom to throw stones at the university, desecrate university property. That is not freedom. Freedom
Right.
is like the independent. That is not independence. Independence is the freedom to take your own responsibility. You are responsible for your own equilibrium. Now here, in an independent, in a freedom based society, as I said, like in an honor, that process of taking responsibility itself is the divinity.
Hmm,
It's
hmm, hmm.
the idea of divinity. That's exactly
Right.
what's also said in the Bhagavad Gita, that ye abhi tumhara jo dharm hai, abhi, baan uthao and fire the arrow. That firing of the arrow, right now you need to plan and fire that arrow. That in itself is your pathway to divinity.
Right.
You don't need to define a separate god. You can,
Right.
it's like, it is that idea of equal, it's the idea of honor that acts as kind of like an anchor for you, that this is my
Right.
duty, this is my honor, for me to take responsibility of my duty and do it to the best of my capability. It is exactly that lets you fly high. It keeps you grounded. You're like a kite. Without
Right.
that honor, like that string which acts as the honor, that code of honor, If you cut that string, that kite cannot fly high. That kite will go helter skelter and eventually fall down. But if you have that anchor, that honor, that sense of duty that ties you to the spool, then only that kite can fly high. That kite can
Right.
bat winds and fly high. And
And
that
in
is
fact, in fact, in Gita, na, Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, the very first argument is this. Arjun is saying कि मैं तो युद्ध नहीं करूंगा. The very first argument that Krishna is providing is that कि तुम युद्ध नहीं करोगे तो तुम्हारे नाम पे तो अपयश होगा, राइट? कुख्याति होगा. और ये फिर ये मतलब इससे जो ये जो वॉट एवर डिफेम जो मिलेगा, ये तो मृत्यु से भी भयावह है. तुम्हारे साथ पुरखों बच्चे जो होंगे उसे याद रखें कि वो लोग याद रखें कि एक कायर पैदा हुआ था जो कुरुक्षेत्र की युद्ध में
right,
गांडी उतार.
right, right, right.
So the very first argument is the argument of honor actually
Yeah.
in
And I
Bhagavad
think
Gita.
in this idea of honor, I mean, I would also like to use this as an allegory for something else. That string, that this same allegory, that kite and that string, that honor named string is also an umbilical cord that ties you to your civilization. So
Right.
imagine a tree, a very large tree.
Mhm.
Okay, a tree hai, imagine a banyan tree hai with hundreds and thousands of branches, with very roots very very deep into the ground. You take one part of this, many different roots, many roots. You take one part of that tree and you douse those roots with acid. That part
Right.
of the tree, that if that, say for example, root number 1 2 3 4 5, if you've killed those roots by dousing them in acid, then that system of the root that is feeding that system of the plant, let's say the right side branches of the plant, the right side branches will die. Only the branches on the left, or the remaining 100 branches will continue sprouting flowers. You know,
Mhm.
branch that has dried, those whose roots have been killed, they are not capable of producing seeds, they're not capable of producing flowers, scent, and food and seeds. All they can do is produce tinder. That
Right.
tinder is so dry that wherever it reaches, that tinder is dry and dead and only capable of igniting fires, forest fires. Okay.
Right.
But the side of that side of the tree which is not bereft of its roots, who have not been cut off from their umbilical cord, the cord that keeps them, they can still keep proliferating. They're like that kite that are tied to that string, that umbilical string of honor, through their roots,
Right.
their civilization. They produce food, they give shade, they produce flowers, they produce fruits. And if those fruits, the seeds, they are carried by wind to other lands, they go and land there as live seeds where they can sprout and create a forest, create a garden. But a twig, but a dry tinder that has been chopped off from its roots is only capable of causing forest fires.
Fire.
And this is exactly what I see in my Indian society, Indo-Pakistani, our Indian subcontinental society. You look at London, okay? You look at London, I do understand that they have a very strict visa process for Indians, etc. But there are plenty of Hindu, Buddhist, blue collar workers who live and work in places like London and New York in very dire conditions. How many
Mhm.
riots have you heard being caused by these Hindus and Buddhists from India, Nepal, Vietnam? Practically zero. Okay, almost zero. Especially Indians and Nepali Hindu blue collar workers have hardly ever caused any riots. But you see people from our neighboring countries, okay, no matter
Right.
where they go, it's not because they're bad people. Nobody
Right.
is nobody is born bad. But one of the main reasons is that umbilical cord has been chopped off.
Right.
That is one of the main reasons they've been turned into dry tinder. And that tinderification, that drying, it's become like so dry and desiccated. A tiny spark causes them
The
to
natural history is dead. Dead basically.
natural history. Because
Um,
अपनी माँ को जो डिफाई कर रहा है, तुम्हारी माँ माँ को तुम इसको तुम माँ के हिसाब से देख सकते हो इस लैंड को, या
right.
तुम ऐसे देख सकते हो ये एक कॉन्क्यूबाइन है, इसको मैंने कैप्चर किया है.
Right.
The two emotions are completely different. It is
True.
not there. You're not defending the same person. The two emotions are
Exactly.
completely different.
Exactly. तो ये तो हमने पिछले लेक्चर में एक्सटेंसिवली ये सब कहे थे. अब्राहमिक हिस्ट्री और सेंट्रिसिटी इज बेसिकली अ सिंथेटिक हिस्टोरिसिटी. ये
Yeah.
बनाया गया बनावटी एक हिस्टोरिसिटी है. इसमें नेचुरल हिस्ट्री को खत्म करके ये सब कहानी बनाया जाता है, और इसीलिए ये लोग लाइब्रेरी जलाते हैं, इसीलिए ये
Yeah.
पंडितों का हत्या करते हैं,
And
ताकि वो हिस्ट्री खत्म किया जाए, रिकॉर्ड ही खत्म कर दिया जाए.
and I think the fact that in Indian subcontinent, we had a very higher population density even back then. We had a
राइट.
higher density of diversity even back then, so they found it very difficult to tackle. Similarly spiritual people, but appearing in very different ways. Number three
राइट.
is we had a simultaneous existence of written records as well as oral records. So how many people will you kill? You have oral records not only in the form of, so the so-called Brahmins who had the canonical oral records with them, but even like every single jati, every single profession, they have a very rich tradition of oral history and poetry and music. So I mean, tum kitna khatam karoge?
राइट. इतना हिस्ट्री खत्म करोगे, हर हर घर से हिस्ट्री निकलेगा.
Yeah, kitna history tum khatam karoge? I mean, you
ए, so about this ना, there is a very nice saying by महाश्वेता देवी, जो मुझे अभी पता चला कुछ दिन पहले, कि किंवदंती इतिहास, किंवदंती ही असली इतिहास है. वो लोगों के जुबान में जो रह जाता है, जो वाला हिस्ट्री, बाकी
yani
सब
ki
तो
oral
कवर नहीं है.
history.
ओरल
Oral
हिस्ट्री.
history is the only real history. So I told
राइट.
you this once before, right? I have these friends who are from
सच ए
the
स्ट्रॉन्ग लाइन ना, किंवदंती इतिहास.
yeah. I think see they have friends who are from the Middle East. So once I saw a very beautiful mosaic at their place. So I asked them, what is this in this typical Iranian miniature painting mosaic at their place?
राइट.
They said it's the entire story of Shahnameh in that Shahnameh. So I asked them about Shahnameh. So they said that, our country fell to, Islam within like 30 years. We were completely decimated because the Persian Empire already had been going down for almost like 1000 years due to infighting. And then we
राइट.
suddenly fell. The first thing that the people did was, in the name of that religion, they burnt all the libraries. So at least you people were able to save something. We were practically able to save almost 0% of our books. Then what happened was, this went on for 300, 400 years. And by that time, so many people had been converted, killed, and, jaziad and etc. Jaziad into, submission, that um, there were there was practically like education had completely finished, and our language was completely almost dead, like the Parsi language almost dead. Then what happened was, I think it was Ghaznavi, Mahmud of Ghazni, who commissioned this guy, Firdausi, to write something grand. So Firdausi, by this time, the language had become completely Ordun. Ordun means language of the camps, which is an Arabized version of Parsi. So Parsi had become Farsi because Arabic does not have pay. Arabic does not have the letter P in it. So, so then Farsi, he wrote Shahnameh. So Shahnameh is not a creation of Firdausi. Shahnameh is a collection of oral history. These stories already existed. Oral history from the ancient tribal, many tribes of Persia. So Shahnameh put those oral histories, stitched them together, and he added a little bit of like more. There was oral history naturally gets a little bit of magic realism to it because it
राइट.
goes on for thousands of years, right? So then
राइट.
he stitched them together, and he added a little bit more of magic realism, his own slight his own twists to it. In his own twist, basically what they are of the opinion, that they are of the opinion that saved the Farsi language, even though it is now an impure language according to them. It at least it saved the language. It kind of made like writing Farsi by younger people like a thing again, so they started writing in Farsi. So what happened was, because he was commissioned by Mahmud of Ghazni, who the Iranians don't think as Iranian, who the Iranians think as a Turani. Turani यानी के जो Turkmeni, uh, they don't consider that as a canonical part of Iranian peoples. But
राइट.
Shahnameh, the twist that that Firdausi has given is that the people of the western Pars, like the Persepolis area, they're kind of like the villains. They came and took over Iran, and well, it is not true. That thing was whole of it was Iran anyway. But anyway, it saved the Iranian language, and it kind of caused a slight resurgence in the Iranian language, literature, and stuff like that. So so then I asked him that, so you think that these stories are true? He said, of course they are true. There are oral history. Oral history is always true. It has some false, but by and large, oral history is true. So I said,
Right.
that means you think that our Ramayana and Mahabharata is also the history of our ancestors. He said, you should consider it as the history of your ancestors. It should be. So
Right.
the thing is, there is some truth in it. There is definitely a lot of truth in it, and there is some magic realism also in it. Let's face it, like magic realism has
So,
probably
so
been written
basically, the
for literary
problem here is,
purposes.
हाँ, the point here is that कि I think हमने discuss भी किया इसको, पिछले एपिसोड में किए थे कि सी मतलब अर्लियर इट वाज नॉट लाइक अच्छा हिस्ट्री फिलोसफी पुराण ये सब अलग अलग सब्जेक्ट है और फिर इसको मतलब स्पेशली ट्रीट करना होगा। अब्राहमिज्म ने इसको ऐसे अलग अलग बनाया इसीलिए ताकि दे कैन किल देम वन बाय वन, दे कैन किल ईच नॉलेज वन बाय वन।
Hmm.
पहले सब कुछ इंटैंगल्ड होता था, हिस्ट्री फिलोसफी मैजिकल रियलिज्म ये सारा एकजुट होके फिर ये मान लीजिए आप इसको पुराण कहे आप इतिहास कहे, ये बोले
No,
ये
the
पूरा
thing is
बनता
that
था, एक पैकेज था ये।
the whole idea of itihas, as per the Western idea, again, this is so non-honorable. It's so
राइट
non-scientific. It's like unless you find a physical evidence that thing did not exist. Yeah, तो फिर materials don't exist because you don't have any physical evidence of like nobody has ever seen an electron. You only have conjectured the idea of an electron through empirical evidence, right? But
राइट
it is still a conjecture. Like
एग्जैक्टली
CH3OH, C2H5OH is not exact. You're just writing C2H5OH is not exactly ethanol.
राइट
C2H5OH हम लोग लिख रहे हैं is ethanol. It is a representative molecular year of ethanol. That is not exactly the structure of ethanol. So
एग्जैक्टली
everything is a conjecture. Whatever you are doing is basically a conjecture. You don't exactly know what is happening in nature. So that means it is not happening. So these European people, they think that only buildings. अरे यार buildings थोड़ी ना रह जाएंगे. Buildings thousands of years बाद हर building is going to go to dust. Like
you look at Europe nowadays.
there is a shloka in there's a shloka in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not able to exactly write, but it says that I am Kal, I am Mahakal. When he
Right.
says, I am Mahakal, I am the greatest warriors of them all. No matter how great a warrior you are, you shall be defeated by me, whether you choose to fight or not. This is what
Right.
Krishna says to Arjun, right?
Right.
So now, in front of Mahakal, in front of Shiva, you're all eventually dust. Okay, you're going to go to dust. So now, say for example, I have a beautiful sari. 150, 200 years down the line, that sari will not exist, but
Right.
the knowledge of weaving the sari exists. तो किसी ने अगर बोला कि एक ऐसा ब्यूटीफुल साड़ी हुआ करता था, हाँ, कहाँ है वो साड़ी? नो, वो तो नहीं है, वो तो डजंट एग्जिस्ट. So then they're like, oh, that means that sari never existed. But you look at the person's weaving technique. If he's telling you that he has learned it from his grandfather, grandfather has learned from his grandfather, etc., must be some iota of truth in it. This is why
Right.
I find this obsession with the Shroud of Turin. एक है ना इन लोगों का obsession. I find it
तो
so.
ओके, सो हम लोग और एक लेक्चर सीरीज करेंगे जो जिसपे मैं एक्चुअली रिसर्च कर रहा हूँ, विच इज की डेटिंग ऑफ हिस्ट्री।
अरे
ये
ये
जो
क्या
डेटिंग ऑफ
है?
हिस्ट्री ये लोग बोलते, ये हिपोक्रिट्स हैं एक्चुअली। ये अपने हिस्ट्री को इस तरह से डेट किया है ना जिसका कोई बेसिस ही नहीं है,
अच्छा,
और फिर
सोचो,
ये आके फिर हमारे हिस्ट्री को, हमारे जो डेटिंग है उसको बर्बाद किया है।
अभी ये जो साइरस है, साइरस द ग्रेट था. साइरस द ग्रेट था, उसका ग्रेव ग्रेव दिखाओ, उसमें बॉडी दिखाओ. अरे वो बॉडी तो पेट्रोलियम बन गया, वो तो हमने गाड़ी में जला दिया. तो फिर साइरस द ग्रेट एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करता था. ऐसे आई डोंट अंडरस्टैंड हाउ these people are so stupid. It is only the abstract that remains. You know,
राइट
a painting will not remain forever, but the
राइट
art of painting will remain forever. A dancer will not remain forever, but the art of dancing will get passed down, and that the memory of that dancing will remain forever. It is only the abstract that remains.
Right.
I don't understand why they, how and why they, how their approach to history has been so unscientific.
इनका इनका वही है, because they want to destroy everything ना,
Yeah.
तो
See,
उसी से one by one लेते हैं, फिर पकड़ के खत्म
in
कर
our Sanskrit definition, itihas is defined as dharmartha kama mokshanam upadesham samanvitam purvavrittam katha yuktam itihasa pradakshate.
हम्म,
So there is a purvavritta portion plus there is a katha yukta portion there too. So
right.
eventually it's talking about oral history only. It's not, because physical history cannot be maintained forever.
ये इनको समझ में नहीं आएगा, बट अपने हिसाब से जब लगना होता है तब जीसस इज अ रियल हिस्टोरिकल फिगर.
इसी तो, जब तक मुझे तुम जीसस का बॉडी नहीं दिखाओगे, उसको कन्वीनियंटली तुम उसको अगवा नहीं कर सकते हो. उसका तुम मुझे बॉडी दिखाओ तो फिर मैं मानूंगी कि वो और उसका मुझे डीएनए एविडेंस भी चाहिए.
राइट.
नहीं, वो श्राउड ऑफ ट्यूरिन है. श्राउड ऑफ ट्यूरिन, श्राउड ऑफ ट्यूरिन, क्या बकवास है.
और वो भी पता नहीं, कुछ तो कोई एनिमल का या किसी का कुछ तो है,
या
अभी
पता नहीं.
अलग अलग स्टोरी चलता रहता है. मैं फिर वो वाला हिस्ट्री में यकीन करूंगा ना.
बहुत कन्वीनियंटली बॉडी भी हवा हो गया 3 दिन के बाद.
हाँ, कहाँ हुआ, कैसे हुआ, कुछ कुछ अता
कुछ
पता है
नहीं
नहीं.
पता, कुछ नहीं पता, इन लोगों को कुछ अता पता नहीं है. बहुत कन्वीनियंट है.
तो इस पे हम लोग एक अलग सीरीज करेंगे. मैं रिसर्च भी कर रहा हूँ, बिकॉज इफ आई वांट टू राइट अनदर हिस्ट्री बुक, फॉर द नेक्स्ट वन आई नीड टू नो द एग्जैक्ट टाइमलाइन एक्चुअली, ताकि मैं भी ये जो फिलोसफी पढ़ रहा हूँ इसको भी मैं ट्रेस कर पाऊँ कुछ हद तक, क्योंकि इन्होंने बहुत ज्यादा छेड़छाड़ किया है हमारे क्रोनोलॉजी के साथ.
द प्रॉब्लम ऑल्सो लाइज विजित इज कि हम लोगों ने एक्सेप्ट भी किया है.
हम्म.
क्योंकि हमारे इंडिपेंडेंस के बाद हमारे पास हमारा ऑप्शन था, शायद था, आई डोंट नो. अभी तो मुझे लगता है कि कुछ इंडिपेंडेंस के नाम पे तो हमें कुछ और ही शायद
ट्रांसफर ऑफ पावर. हाँ.
ट्रांसफर ऑफ पावर ही मिला था. ठीक है, फिर भी हमारे हाथ में कुछ तो था. एक्चुअली आई वुड आर्ग्यू दैट गिवन द काइंड ऑफ दगाबाजी आवर education ministers have done with us, I think our families have done a good job.
राइट.
कुछ तो सच हमको बताया. इसीलिए मुझे बचपन में ना थोड़ा ये जो सोशल साइंसेस जो होते हैं इसके प्रति मुझे थोड़ा ना चिढ़ होता था. इसलिए मुझे हमेशा लगता है कि ये कुछ, इसमें कुछ रैशनल मुझे मिल ही नहीं रहा है, कि ऐसे कैसे
राइट.
हो गया कि एक इतना ब्रूटल रेजीम, जो ब्रिटिश लोगों का इतना ब्रूटल रेजीम था कि इतने लोगों को मारा, इतने लोगों को काला पानी, सजाए काला पानी दिया, ये किया वो किया, और उनके सामने हम लोगों ने जस्ट ऐसे पिकेट किया, थोड़ा शांति प्रिय विद्रोह किया, और वो लोग हमको छोड़ के चले गए. आई मीन, द रीजन कैन नॉट बी कि हमसे, हमारे शांति के प्रस्ताव से वो लोग डर के भाग गए. ऐसा तो हो नहीं
यस.
सकता. तो फिर ये
एग्जैक्टली.
मुझे कभी कभी मुझे ये वी आर रीडिंग ऑल्सो लिटिल बिट अबाउट द अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन, कि हमको पता
हाँ
है
हाँ.
ये लोग कितना वायलेंट कॉलोनाइजिंग पावर थे, कि अपने डिसेंडेंट्स को इन लोगों ने नहीं छोड़ा. ये जो अमेरिकन जॉर्ज वॉशिंगटन वगैरह थे, ये खुद इन लोगों
एग्जैक्टली.
के डिसेंडेंट थे. 7 generations डाउन द लाइन इन लोगों का खून इतना चूसते थे कि मार के इन लोगों को भगाना पड़ा. तो अपने
राइट.
डिसेंडेंट्स को जो नहीं छोड़ते हैं, वो आपको क्यों छोड़ेंगे. और फिर अगर आपको छोड़ना ही है तो फिर इतना मारा मारी करके, इतना क्या डेस्परेशन था आपको कॉलोनाइज करने का. आई मीन जरूर, आई मीन आई एम प्रीटी श्योर देयर वाज सम रीजन व्हाई दे कॉलोनाइज्ड यू, व्हाई दे वर सो डेस्परेट टू कॉलोनाइज यू. कोई तो फाइनेंशियल इन लोगों का बेनिफिट हो रहा था, और एक पॉइंट
राइट.
ऑफ टाइम के बाद शायद इतना आपको चूस लिया था कि अब फाइनेंशियल बेनिफिट उतना उन लोगों को दिख नहीं रहा था. इसीलिए एक अरेंजमेंट करके वो लोग भाग गए, और जिसको हम ऐसे बोल रहे हैं कि ये बहुत एक यूनिक, अप्रतिम, पहले कभी नहीं हुआ ऐसा फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल था. वो क्या हुआ, व्हाट हैपेंड टू दिस पीपल. एक कोकोनट हिट देयर हेड, दे बिकेम सो बेनोवलेंट, इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल. सो ये मुझे
Yes.
कभी रैशनल लगा ही नहीं हमारे हिस्ट्री.
Gandhism essentially was a tool, and an मतलब it was a tool for Hindu genocide.
एक हम
इसके बारे में ये लिखना होगा, मतलब probably I will write it, but we need to sort of publish this thing, these kind of, कि ये एक्चुअली हिंदुओं को मारने के लिए एक आइडिया, मतलब it was not our ideology that would benefit us ever, और हमें ये लिखना होगा इसके बारे में.
और कितने सारे लोगों का आई मीन व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज कि ये जो हमने फॉर एग्जांपल आप अगर देखो हमारे हिस्ट्री बुक्स में जो 1000 एडी के पहले 500 इयर्स और 1000 इयर्स वहां आप कुछ पता ही नहीं है लोगों को कुछ.
Right.
दे आर नॉट बॉदर्ड. जैसे हमारे बंगाल में इफ यू गो टू मायापुर वहां एक पुराना किंगडम का ruins है. आई थिंक शायद सेन वंशज का उन लोगों का ruins है. लेकिन बंगाल में आपको मुर्शिदाबाद में यू आर लाइक वो मुर्शिदाबाद में ये सिराजुद्दौला ये वो एक्सेट्रा प्रूव करने के लिए आप तत्पर हैं. लेकिन मायापुर में इतना बड़ा ruins, इतना मैग्निफिसेंट ruins फ्रॉम सम टाइम, उसके बारे में हमको कुछ नहीं पता है. फिर
Right.
बंगाल में नाटोर की रानी, इनफैक्ट इन मुर्शिदाबाद itself there are very beautiful temples. There is a Shakti Peeth, there's a Kiriti something Shakti Peeth there. In addition to that, there are very beautiful temples created by Rani Bhumani. Like there are around 200 years or so old. लेकिन किसी आप कहीं किसी बंगाली के मुंह में आप नहीं सुनेंगे. और व्हेन आई वाज यंग ग्रोइंग अप, बंगाल में कोई अगर मुझे पूछता था कि टूरिज्म का क्या है, हिस्टोरिकल टूरिज्म, मैं बोलती थी कि एक शांति निकेतन है, एक एक कलकत्ता है, एक मुर्शिदाबाद है, और बाकी एक दार्जिलिंग है घूमने के लिए, और दीघा है. और मुझे ग्रोइंग अप, क्योंकि मुझे
Right.
सब ऐसा बोलते थे. लेकिन यू थिंक ऑफ बांकुड़ा बिष्णुपुर, आई डोंट
Right.
थिंक देयर इज अ साइट इन वेस्ट बंगाल एज मैग्निफिसेंट एज बिष्णुपुर. आई डोंट थिंक सो.
राइट. राइट. और आप एक चीज देखो, ये जो बांकुड़ा, पुरुलिया या फिर मेदिनीपुर, यहाँ का जो कल्चर है, जिसमें आपका बाउल आ गया, आपका जो मंगल दर्शन है, मतलब यहाँ पे तो आप देखोगे बहुत सारे टेम्पल है, ओपन टेम्पल है, मतलब पेड़ के नीचे টেম্পল বানা দিয়া, হাতি ঘোড়া রেখে দিল, হাতি ঘোড়া রেখে পুজো করতে শুরু করে দিল, কি না ধর্মরাজের বাহন. সো বেসিক্যালি দিস মঙ্গল কালচার, রাইট, মঙ্গল দর্শন যেটা, अम, इसका चर्चा ही नहीं होता. मतलब कलकत्ता में मंगल दर्शन जो बाकी पूरे बंगाल में जो इतना एक सेंट्रल पीस ऑफ आवर बिलीफ है,
और
जिसके
तुम
अराउंड लोग उपवास रखते हैं.
राइट, and if you look at our culture, बहुत we have been deracinated for a long time. I'm pretty sure you have read Sunil Gangopadhyay.
हम्म.
So Sunil Gangopadhyay's this Sheshamay and Pratham Alo. Pratham Alo mein there is a very beautiful description of this deracination of the Bengali urban elite. एक कैरेक्टर है सुनील गंगोपाध्याय के प्रथम आलो में, जो प्रोटैगनिस्ट है, दो प्रोटैगनिस्ट है उसमें. एक बच्चा है जो हाफ मणिपुरी हाफ असमीज है, और एक बच्ची है जो ओडिया है. तो वो दोनों समहाउ भाग्य चक्र से आके कलकत्ता में आके वो लोग खो जाते हैं, और तो फिर उन दोनों को एम्प्लॉयमेंट मिलता है एक बहुत रिच बंगाली एरिस्टोक्रेटिक फैमिली में. सो यू नो दे आर चिल्ड्रन, सो दे आर एम्प्लॉयड. कोई थोड़ा गार्डन में एम्प्लॉयड हो जाता है, और जो बच्ची है वो शी बिकम्स लाइक अ हेल्पर टू द लेडीज. तो वो ये करती है, थोड़ा मिसलेनियस काम करती है, पानी भर दो, ये कर दो, वो कर दो. और संध्या आरती, शी डज द संध्या एट होम. तो उसको दिया गया है उसका ये. सो वो क्या करती है, जब संध्या करती है तो वो गीत गोविंद या ओडिया फोक से कुछ गाती है, और वो बहुत सुंदर से वो संध्या करती है, गाना गा के पूरे घर में उसका वॉइस रेजोनेट करता है, और कभी कभी डांस भी करती है. तो कभी कभी जो लेडीज हैं वहां की, वो लेडीज लोग अच्छी अच्छी थिएटर्स देखने जाती हैं, ये करने जाती हैं, वो करने जाती हैं. लेकिन कभी कभी उसको बोलती हैं कि थोड़ा डांस करो, थोड़ा वो करो, तो वो बहुत खूबसूरती से उनके सामने अपना नृत्य और गीत गोविंद के गाने के ऊपर अपने डांस करके दिखाती हैं. और सब हंसते हैं उसको देख के. यू नो हाउ लेडीज फ्रॉम रिच फैमिलीज दे रोल ओवर ईच अदर लाफिंग एट हर. तो उसको पूछते हैं वो लेडीज कि आपने ये कहाँ सीखा, तो वो बोलती है मेरे पापा के पास सीखा। तो उनको बहुत हंसी आती है कि एक पुरुष होके डांस सीख रहे। तो वो बोलती है कि हमारे गांव में तो सबको डांस आता है, ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है। जो पंडा है वो जो सबको डांस तो सब सब करते हैं, इसमें कौन सी बड़ी बात है। Can you see that from the behavior of the Assamese Manipuri guy and by this Odia girl who are in Bengal, you see the difference between the deracination, less deracination of their societies than our societies. You see it in that novel itself. ये सुनील गंगोपाध्याय जो खुद एक लेफ्ट विंग राइटर हैं, आई मीन वो ही लिख रहे हैं। तो सोचो कि कितना हम लोग अपना जो कल्चर ऑफ द सॉइल भूल चुके हैं। देखिए देखो, एक हमारा रविंद्र नृत्य है, बहुत ही सुंदर है, लेकिन रविंद्र नृत्य इज नॉट लाइक द फोक डांस, फोक बेस्ड क्लासिकल डांस कल्चर ऑफ बंगाल। बाकी जो सब हैं, जैसे कथक आ गया, जैसे ओडिसी आ गया, जैसे भरतनाट्यम, मोहिनीअट्टम, सब ना उस जगह के सॉइल के फोक कल्चर से उपजे हैं। मणिपुरी आ गया, सब कुछ। और एवरीथिंग हैज सम कनेक्शन टू द अर्स्टवाइल टेम्पल इकोसिस्टम, जहाँ पे ये जो नाट्य है या ये जो नृत्य है, गाना है, ये ऑफर किया जाता था एज अ रिचुअलिस्टिक प्रैक्टिस फॉर स्पिरिचुअलिटी, फॉर स्पिरिचुअल पर्पसेस। वो बंगाल में बिल्कुल इट्स लॉस्ट इन द सैंड्स ऑफ टाइम। यहाँ बंगाल में एक सिर्फ रविंद्रनाथ, जो आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट द रविंद्र जिहादीज, आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट रविंद्रनाथ हिमसेल्फ। उनका एक बहुत ग्रैंड सिविलाइजेशनल व्यू पॉइंट था। तो
Right.
उन्होंने क्या किया, इनिशियली व्हेन ही स्टार्टेड दिस आइडिया ऑफ रविंद्र संगीत, रविंद्र नृत्य ड्रामास, ही गॉट गुरुज फ्रॉम केरला एंड ही गॉट गुरुज फ्रॉम मणिपुर, द farthest two places on in the Indian nation, right? And he got his students to learn both Manipuri and Kathakali. And by
Right.
mixing Manipuri and Kathakali, they would create dance dramas. उनका जो था वो एक सिविलाइजेशनल इंटीग्रेशन का व्यू पॉइंट था। वो इट्स अ ग्रेट, सो बेसिकली रविंद्र नृत्य इज नॉट अ वेरी बंगाली आर्ट, इट इज अ पैन
Right.
इंडियन आर्ट, पैन सिविलाइजेशनल आर्ट। उसमें थोड़ा आपको कैंडी क्लासिकल भी सीखना थोड़ा पड़ता है इन लोगों को, थोड़ा यू हैव टू लर्न अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ जापानीज क्लासिकल जो सीखते हैं। लेकिन
Hmm.
वेयर इज द क्लासिकल डांस फॉर्म ऑफ द बंगाल एरिया? ओडिसी तो नहीं है वो, कथक भी
Right.
नहीं है। कथक बहुत खूबसूरत है, वो तो मैं भी सीखती हूँ, लेकिन बंगाल का जो गौड़ीय नृत्य है, जो हमारे स्क्रिप्चर्स में भी मेंशन्ड है, वो उसके जो सब क्लासिकल डांस फॉर्म्स है, वो अभी भी प्रैक्टिस होते हैं इन पुरुलिया एंड इन द फॉर्म ऑफ फोक डांसेस, अभी भी प्रैक्टिस
Right.
होती है या बांकुड़ा इस जगह पे। लेकिन किसी ने नहीं सोचा कि हम इसको ले आएंगे, किसी ने नहीं सोचा कि इन फोक आर्टिस्ट से हम को कोलेट करके एक रिकंस्ट्रक्शन करेंगे। टिल द 1980s a lady did that, इसने किया, उनका नाम है महुआ मुखोपाध्याय, प्रोफेसर महुआ मुखोपाध्याय। शी डिड अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क, सो दे रिक्रिएटेड। तो उसको सबसे ज्यादा अप्रिशिएट किसने किया सोचो? वेस्ट बंगाल गवर्नमेंट ने तो नहीं किया, उसको किया सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट में। आज भी उसके ऊपर जो स्कॉलरशिप मिलता है रिसर्च के ऊपर, गौड़ीय नृत्य के ऊपर, वो सेंट्रल
Hmm.
गवर्नमेंट का स्कॉलरशिप है।
Right.
सो व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से कि हम लोग इतने डीरेसिनेटेड हो चुके हैं, क्योंकि शायद सबसे ज्यादा फॉल हमारा हुआ था, उसके बाद ब्रिटिश आए, वो तो सेंटर ऑफ पावर यहाँ हो गया, इसलिए हम बहुत ज्यादा हट चुके थे। टिल आई थिंक द एडवेंट ऑफ मे बी श्री रामकृष्ण, हम लोग बहुत
Right.
ज्यादा हट चुके थे हमारे। लेकिन वो जो ट्रेजेक्टरी हम लोगों ने पकड़ी थी ऑफ गोइंग बैक टू आवर सॉइल, वो फिर से इंडिपेंडेंस के बाद डीरेल हो गया।
Right. In Goud, somewhere in Malda. Yeah, ruins of ancient city everywhere. You come to Vishnupur, यार. You come to Vishnupur. Even मैं जो बोल रहा हूँ, मतलब जो भी ट्राइबल कल्चर है, बाउल कल्चर है, ये सब तो खत्म हो चुका है लगभग, क्योंकि वो जो इकोसिस्टम था उसको उसको खत्म कर चुके हैं हम लोग, उसको ये स्टेट खत्म कर चुका है। और जैसे बाउल कल्चर है वो टेम्पल या इसके अलावा ये रहन मतलब सस्टेन नहीं कर पाता, और किया भी नहीं, एज वी हैव ऑलरेडी सीन, राइट।
Right, and also there's a lot of talk in about Devdasi culture, right? कि अगर कोई मैल प्रैक्टिस, सोशल मैल प्रैक्टिस अगर हो भी देवदासी कल्चर के साथ, यू कैन थ्रो द बेबी आउट विद द बाथ वाटर। वो सोशल मैल प्रैक्टिस तुम दूर करो, पूरा देवदासी कल्चर जो है उसको नॉट ओनली दूर किया, 1960s में हमारा टेम्पल्स नेशनलाइज कर दिया। उसके बाद जो रिटायर्ड देवदासीज है, आई अंडरस्टैंड देयर इज नो मोर डांसिंग इन टेम्पल्स लाइक दैट एनी मोर, लेकिन जो रिटायर्ड देवदासीज हैं जिनको सैलरीज मिल रहा था, पेंशन मिल रहा था टेम्पल फंड से, वो सैलरीज भी खत्म कर दिया। तो फिर वो बेचारी, लाइक देयर वर पीपल जिनको फिर आर्टिस्ट लोगों के कंसोर्शियम ने एकजुट होके फिर उन लोगों को खाने पीने का बंदोबस्त किया, उन ओल्ड देवदासी बिचारी लोगों का, क्योंकि सारा पैसा टेम्पल का तो ले लिया इंदिरा गांधी के गवर्नमेंट ने।
टेम्पल का तो मतलब
लॉन्ग टॉपिक
yeah, and the problem is we can see ki how each problem is connected to the other.
it's because you have no sense of honor and respect for your own culture. तुम
Right.
अगर यूरोपियन सोशलिस्ट बनने की कोशिश करोगे, तुम कौवा होके मयूर का पूंछ लगा के, स्वान का फेदर्स लगा के, तुम सुंदर नहीं लगोगे। तुम कौवा हो तो कौवा ही सुंदर लगता है, कौवा कौवा की जगह सुंदर है। Be proud of being a crow. They're intelligent creatures. तुम मोर हो, तुम उसको ब्लीच करके कुछ और बनने का कोशिश मत करो।
अरे अपना आनंद ज्वाइन कर रहेगा, आनंद ज्वाइन कर लो यार फिर, इफ यू वांट टू ज्वाइन। देयर वाज एक्चुअली एन एक्शन अब्यूज व्हेन द ब्रिटिश caused it, so the mother was a devdasi.
No, he's probably right. Actually, there's nothing called a Devdasi caste, Bijeet. Actually,
Right, right.
this Devdasis, uh, Devdasis are actually they are people who are married to the Lord. That's kind of like it used to be like a spiritual practice. Like for example, there were many Devadasis in the southern Indian temples who came from land-owning castes. So they came from, like, mid-level well-off families. Okay. एंड एम एस सुब्बलक्ष्मी का की मदर देवदासी थी, उसके फादर ब्राह्मण थे। तो एम एस सुब्बलक्ष्मी हर, ठीक है, आई अंडरस्टैंड, बट बाय द टाइम इट वाज 1940s and 1950s, the people of India, we had become a nation state, and the people of India had become like the my बाप instead of like the royalty of Indians. बट जब तुम प्रिवी पर्स खत्म कर रहे हो रॉयल किंगडम्स का, और तुम टेम्पल्स को नेशनलाइज कर रहे हो, जो देवदासी लोग अभी तक ओल्ड महारी जो ओडिशा के टेम्पल्स में थी, उन लोगों का जो एक पेंशन मिल रहा था उन बेचारियों का, वो भी खत्म कर दिया। तो एक
Right.
ऑल्टरनेट स्कीम तो होना चाहिए ना गवर्नमेंट का, कि हम इस ऐसे ऐसे ट्रांजिशन कर रहे हैं। देयर वाज नो थॉट प्रोसेस गिवन।
आनंद वांट टू ज्वाइन। देवदासी वाला मुझे ज्यादा आइडिया नहीं है। सो
नहीं, ये
अच्छा,
तो
ही इज बिजी।
मेनी थिंग्स एक्चुअली, द होल थिंग इज बिकॉज तुमको हमारे पॉलिसी मेकर्स में ना कोई सेंस ऑफ ऑनर नहीं है, कि हम एक देश को एक दूसरे देश का कॉपी पेस्ट कुछ बनाना चाहते हैं। क्यों?
आप देखो इवन मतलब द आर्किटेक्चर, राइट, मतलब दिस होल आर्किटेक्चर किस तरह से गंदा किया गया है इंडिया का। यू लुक एट द टाउन्स यार, द सिटीज, दे लुक सो अगली। व्हाई? बिकॉज वही कि ब्लाइंड एक तरह से ना समझ के ना कुछ करके उसको चीप कॉपी किया गया है।
और
अब यहाँ पे ट्रॉपिकल वेदर है, लाल मिट्टी है, वहां पे इस तरह का ब्रूटलिस्ट आर्किटेक्चर जैसे घर बनाते हैं हमारे इधर, कितना घटिया लगता है।
राइट।
पहले टेराकोटा होता था, कितना अच्छा लगता था।
और हमारे देश में हम ऐसे एक देश को पूजते हैं इन द नेम ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी, जो खुद एक फ्यूडल जमींदारी है ना। ब्रिटेन क्या है? वो एक फ्यूडल जमींदारी है। आज तक ब्रिटेन में लैंड रिफॉर्म हुआ है? तो वो हमको कभी वो सोशलिज्म का लेक्चर मत दो, हम इक्वालिटी वगैरह का लेक्चर मत दो। तुम अपने अपने गिरेबान में झांको, देखो तुम कितने गंदे हो।
एग्जैक्टली।
और हम इन्हीं को कॉपी करना चाहते हैं, जो ना खुद को समझते हैं, ना हमको समझते हैं। ये भी आप सोचो ना कि ये लोग सब, मैं जो बोलती हूँ मेरे हस्बैंड को, ये लोग ये सब the entirety of the West suffers from the Pakistan syndrome कि ये भूल चुके
Right.
हैं कि खुद कौन है. तुम एक बड़े-बड़े फिलोसोफर का नाम लो, सोक्रेटिस, प्लेटो, जो सबसे पहले मन में आता है by way of Western civilization. कुछ
Right.
Abrahamics, they are all pre-Abrahamic. जो सिविलाइजेशन को खत्म किया, उसी सिविलाइजेशन के सिंबल्स को लेके आप क्यों इतना सचेतन हो? ये डेमोक्रेसी तो अब्राहमिज्म के बाद नहीं आया ना, डेमोक्रेसी तो वो प्री अब्राहमिक आइडिया है, ग्रेको रोमानियन आइडिया. तो फिर इसको लेके इतना रिलीजन टाइप का क्यों बना रहे हो कि डेमोक्रेसी वो
सही
तो
बात है.
सिविलाइजेशन आपने खत्म कर दिया, खुद अपने आप का सिविलाइजेशन आपने खत्म कर दिया, है कि नहीं?
Exactly. और Europeans are, they are now, मतलब some of them want to go back to the pagan route, but it's not possible. मतलब
It's a minuscule
वो
minority.
लोग अपने आप में बोल रहे हैं कि अरे ये चर्च के नीचे पेगन टेम्पल दबा हुआ है. वो लोग, उसका वीडियो आता रहता है कि इन्होंने यहाँ पे तो एक पेगन टेम्पल हुआ करता था. छोटे मोटे कहानी आता रहता है, बट इट्स डन.
नहीं, अपने आप को तुम लोगों ने अपने
हाँ.
आप को खत्म किया है.
You have
अपने आप को.
spitted on your own ancestors and their
Exactly.
values
ये
for
जो
thousands
ऐसे
of years.
जब ये बामियान के बुद्धा को उड़ाया गया था, अरे ये तुम्हारा धरोहर है, ये तुम्हारा हेरिटेज है, वो हमारे देश में नहीं है. एक सेम चीज है सीसीपी, लेकिन एटलीस्ट आई वुड से द चाइनीज पीपल वो शायद इतने भी डिरेसिनेटेड खुद नहीं है, लेकिन वहां भी वो क्रेजीनेस है. लेकिन ये वेस्ट में मैं बोलती हूँ कि आप सब पाकिस्तान सिंड्रोम से सफर करते हैं, क्योंकि आप खुद भूल चुके हैं आपकी माँ का नाम.
राइट. नहीं, इसने आनंद ने एक पॉइंट बोला कि दास और स्लेव, राइट? Yes,
एग्जैक्टली.
slave means purchased kritodas. Servant literally, slave literally mean kritodas. Purchased servant. दास मतलब दा धातु से आया है, जो सेवा करता है, जो सेवा दान करता है, वही दास है.
चलो आज बहुत इट्स लाइक अ लॉन्ग स्ट्रीम फॉर यू गाइस.
हाँ, फिर सोते हैं अभी. फिर मैं तो मंडे या ट्यूसडे आऊंगा. फिर इसी को कंटिन्यू करेंगे, हिंदू मोरालिटीज, नेचुरल मोरालिटी. फिर आई थिंक आनंद भी तब ज्वाइन कर पाएगा, भूपेंद्र भी आई थिंक वापस आ जाएगा फिर.
ठीक है. चलो.
हाँ चलो, गुड नाइट, मतलब आपका गुड मॉर्निंग होगा फिर. एडमिन, आई थिंक वी कैन क्लोज नाउ.
Yeah. So this is the end.
Yes.
We will again Monday or Tuesday, I think, lecture number 4. So
Right.
do join. Good night, everyone. Jai Sri Ram, Vande Mataram.
Yes, वंदे मातरम.